Just like that, Ling Tianyu became the first disciple to qualify for the primeval trials, while the disciple in the Great Circle of Foundation Establishment realm, whom he defeated, became the first unlucky guy to be eliminated. Looking at that person's dazed look, many people felt sad for a moment. A dignified disciple in the Great Circle of Foundation Establishment realm was eliminated just like that. It really made people sigh and speechless. In terms of strength, this person was not weak among the experts in the Great Circle of Foundation Establishment realm. If he had not encountered Ling Tianyu, he actually had a great chance to win 3 rounds against other experts of the same level. Of course, the premise was that his luck was not too bad. Unfortunately, there were no ifs in this world. His luck was not just bad, it was simply bad luck. Under such cruel rules, it was impossible for him not to be eliminated. Even if he wanted to blame someone, he could only blame himself for being targeted by Ling Tianyu. Brother Tianyu, as far as I know, you are not someone who easily admits defeat. Why didn't you continue to challenge Lin Yi today, but chose such a soft persimmon instead? Shui Jianfeng suddenly came over and asked with a strange and sarcastic smile on his face. As soon as his words came out, everyone around looked over. Even Xian Jie couldn't help but listen attentively out of curiosity. For this reason, he even deliberately postponed the next cross-level battle. Ling Tianyu glanced around the crowd, and when his eyes swept past Lin Yi, he nodded slightly without any embarrassment. Then he said lightly, Brother Shui, you are wrong. Tianyu respects every opponent. In Tianyu's eyes, Brother Zhan is a real opponent, not a soft persimmon. This Brother Zhan was Zhan Shixiang, the disciple in the Great Circle of Foundation Establishment realm, whom he had just defeated with one move. Although Ling Tianyu's expression was very sincere, everyone felt that it was just a formality. Zhan Shixiang was a strong opponent for others, but for a genius like Ling Tianyu, it was not an exaggeration to say that Zhan Shixiang was a soft persimmon. Even Zhan Shixiang himself thought so. Sure enough, he was a hypocrite. Shui Jianfeng cursed in his heart, but remained calm on the surface. He said with a faint smile, Brother Tianyu seems to have not answered my question, because I am no match for Brother Lin. It's as simple as that. Ling Tianyu didn't hide his answer at all. The outcome of the battle the day before yesterday had already been decided. At least for now, he wasn't Lin Yi's opponent. Even if he had the pride of being the young master of the Thousand Blades sect, he wouldn't lie to himself about this kind of thing. Really? Then why don't you challenge me? I have been waiting for you for a long time. Shui Jianfeng's words surprised everyone. Everyone immediately looked at each other. Shui Jianfeng and Ling Tianyu were both like kings in the Foundation Establishment realm. Unfortunately, they had never had the opportunity to fight each other head-on. Therefore, the strength of the two had always been one of the hottest topics in the market. However, Ling Tianyu did not choose Shui Jianfeng for 2 cross-level challenges in a row, which made everyone very disappointed. Unexpectedly, Shui Jianfeng actually provoked him in public at this time. Did he want to fight with Ling Tianyu? Is it necessary? Ling Tianyu glanced at him with a faint smile. Everyone couldn't help but burst into an uproar. Ling Tianyu's answer seemed to be casual and ordinary, but there was indescribable self-confidence and contempt in it. It seemed that in his eyes, Shui Jianfeng was not in existence on the same level as him, and there was no need to deliberately defeat him. Ha 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 ha. Shui Jianfeng looked up to the sky and laughed until he was out of breath. After a long while, he suddenly said, That's right, there is indeed no need. As he said this, he had already officially added Ling Tianyu's name to his must-kill list. Although the 1,000 blades flying together was a little tricky, Ling Tianyu was still an expert at the peak of the late stage of Foundation Establishment realm, while he was at the early stage of Gold Core realm. It was obvious who was stronger and who was weaker. Ling Tianyu smiled indifferently and didn't continue to pay attention to him. He also didn't have any interest in watching other people's battles, so he chose to turn around and leave. Chapter 5187. This was the cruelty of challenging someone of a higher level. It was extremely difficult and dangerous. With Zhan Shixiang as an example, everyone who was challenged would definitely go all out. Whenever there was a chance, they would strike ruthlessly to establish their might, killing the chicken to warn the monkey. Only in this way could others fear them and stay far away. no longer daring to challenge them of a higher level. When the 7 cross-level duels were over, Xianijia was about to announce the start of the second round of regular duels. At this moment, Shui Jianfeng stood up and said loudly, "I'm sorry, Junior Uncle Xian. There's something that I have to tell everyone. Otherwise, some people will play us in the palm of their hands with dirty and despicable means. They think that no one knows about it." "What are you trying to say?" Xianijia humphed coldly, trying his best to control his temper. His impression of Shui Jianfeng was extremely bad. If it wasn't for everyone's eyes, he wouldn't be so polite. "What I'm trying to say is that our Snow Sword School sent out a traitor, and because of this traitor, our Snow Sword School's disciples lost a battle that they shouldn't have lost." Shui Jianfeng pointed at one person. It was Long Long. Long Long suddenly became the center of attention. She didn't know what to do. Fortunately, Linny was standing next to her. One look from him calmed her down and she retorted, "First, I'm not a traitor. The Snow Sword School never announced that I'm a traitor. Second, I don't know what you're talking about. What does the Snow Sword School's disciple losing the battle have to do with me?" Shui Jianfeng laughed coldly and pointed at Luo Shasheng. "All right, then why don't you tell everyone with Luo Shasheng's strength, how could he be defeated by Lingshan in one move when he had already formed a snow form? Of course, it's because Lingshan had a better grasp of the rhythm, and Luo Shasheng underestimated his opponent. What's so strange about losing the battle?" Long Long said disapprovingly. "That's right, everyone can see that. It's a perfect example of the weak defeating the strong. There's nothing to doubt," Xianijia added. "I don't think so. Lingshan's grasp of the rhythm was ingenious, and Luo Shasheng did underestimate his opponent. But if it's just based on these 2 points, she would at most be able to find a flaw in his counterattack. Why don't you guys put yourselves in her shoes and think about it? If you guys had the opportunity to counterattack, would you be able to turn defeat into victory in one move?" Shui Jianfeng asked. Everyone paused for a moment, shaking their heads in unison. Luo Shasheng had used his snow force, and that powerful restriction effect was real. Even if he revealed an opening, it would still be extremely hard to defeat him in one move. After all, Lingshan was just a newbie in the common world who just reached foundation level. Xianijia frowned. Although he didn't want to agree, what Shui Jianfeng said did make some sense. Recalling the scene of Lingshan turning the tables, even he felt that it was a little unbelievable. "So, I think it's necessary to ask again. Why was Lingshan able to defeat Luo Shasheng in one move under that situation?" Shui Jianfeng didn't need Long Long's answer, because he had his own. He pointed at Long Long and said, "There's only one reason. We, Shui Jian, sent out a traitor. A traitor who revealed our sex arts to the enemy." Linny couldn't help but laugh when he heard this. Shui Jianfeng was really shameless. He had already become a lackey of the center, but he could still say that Long Long was a traitor in public. "What a weirdo. What proof do you have?" Xianijia said in a low voice. At this point, he had to continue the conversation. Otherwise, it would be his dereliction of duty as the leader of the team. However, it was impossible for him to follow Shui Jianfeng's wishes. Unless Shui Jianfeng could present solid evidence, otherwise, it would just be a groundless speculation. Lingshan's attack that turned the tables just so happened to hit the life gate of Snow Murder form. Because of that, she was able to kill Luo Shasheng in one move. It can't be a coincidence, can it? Shui Jianfeng smiled coldly. Every sect had different mental cultivation methods, and the way to circulate their zhenqi was also different. Every move and every style had a completely different emphasis, so the vital point of every move was very different. For example, when using the snow-killing style, when using this move, the throat was the most crucial point of the vital point of the zhenqi circulation. As long as the throat was hit, even if the opponent was weak, it would be easy to defeat the opponent in one move. Xianijia could only look at Linny, hoping that Linny could stand out and refute it himself. After all, what Shui Jianfeng said did make sense. It would be too far-fetched to say that Lingshan's last move that went straight for Luo Shasheng's throat was a coincidence. You have nothing to say now, right? If it wasn't for Long Long, if it wasn't for the traitor, if it wasn't for her revealing our sex arts and the life gate of Snow Sword School, how could Lingshan win against Luo Shasheng with her insignificant strength? So now, the evidence is irrefutable. Lung Lung is the traitor, and Ling Shan relied on her to turn the tables. Shui Jianfeng struck the iron while it was hot and made the final decision. This time, everyone's gazes towards Long Long and Ling Shan turned unfriendly. Although this matter didn't seem to have anything to do with them, it affected the fairness of the competition. If Xinegs still wanted to cover up for them, he'd be the target of everyone's wrath. Hold on. Ling Shan's technique is indeed a perfect counter to your snow sword school. Chapter 5188. After a while, Shui Jianfeng tried his best to explain. That's different. The other sects are only suppressing it on the surface. Even if they don't know the practitioner's arts and the styles Ming Min, it's not hard as long as they use the right strategy. But Luo Shasheng is different. His styles Ming Min has been locked on, so there's no doubt about it. Is that so? Then according to what you're saying, as long as we can lock on the styles Ming Min, it must be someone who snitched on us? Linny smiled faintly. Of course, if it's not someone snitching on us, do you think it's just luck? Shui Jianfeng humphed coldly. Linny glanced at the other people's expressions. Seeing that they were still skeptical, he said, then what if I can lock on the opponent's Ming Min with ease later? What do you say? How is that possible? Shui Jianfeng snorted disdainfully. Even if Lin Yi's strength was much higher than his opponent's, the most he could do was win with brute force. It was impossible for him to lock onto his opponent's moves, unless he knew his opponent's arts and all their moves like the back of his hand. Plus, the drawing hadn't even started yet. They didn't even know who their opponent was. Lin Yi's words were *T to Shui Jianfeng. All right, then open your eyes wide and watch. We'll talk after you're done. Lin Yi smiled faintly. All right, but let me say this first. If you can't lock on the opponent's Ming Min later, it'll be a confession. I suggest disqualifying Long Long and Ling Shan. Uncle Xian, that's not too much, is it? Shui Jianfeng said immediately. Xianejia and Lin Yi looked at each other. Seeing how calm Lin Yi was, he nodded in front of the crowd. After all, if Lung Lung revealed the Snow Sword School's practitioner's arts to others, it would be too bad of an influence. They could only be disqualified as a warning to others. All right, let's start then, Lin Yi said casually. All right. Xianejia immediately began to preside over the drawing of lots for the Foundation Establishment Great Perfection Disciples. Including Lin Yi and Shui Jianfeng, there were originally 8 Foundation Establishment Great Perfection Disciples. However, because of Ling Tianyou's successful cross-level challenge and Zhang Shixiang's early elimination, there were only 7 left. This wasn't easy to arrange, but it wasn't completely unsolvable. They just had to draw the missing disciples and make them priority for the next round. If they didn't get enough matches because of this, they could just make up for it in the future. The results came out very quickly, and Lin Yi's opponent this time was the only female of the entire group of perfected foundations, Duanmuyu, the senior sister leading the group from Leafling. Although she was a girl, Duanmuyu's every move was valiant and quite masculine. Both her dressing and temperament were very masculine. She was a maverick woman. The corner of Shui Jianfeng's lips curled up when he saw this. Lin Yi had sworn that he could easily lock onto any opponent's Ming Min, but this Yi Ling sect was one of the most mysterious sects in the Archaic Alliance. Their movements were like ghosts, and their moves were extraordinary. Even Shui Jianfeng didn't know much about them. He couldn't even name their moves, let alone Ming Min. Lin Yi's bet was a lost one, given that he'd picked an opponent like this. Please. Lin Yi walked into the field slowly and made a gesture to Duanmuyu. Duanmuyu nodded slightly and didn't say anything. She moved her feet and dashed towards Lin Yi. Her movement was very strange. Like a falling leaf in the wind, she drifted from left to right, but her speed wasn't slow at all. In the blink of an eye, she was in front of Lin Yi. Duanmuyu's movement is quite the essence of Yi Ling's sect. Although she's not as amazing as Ling Tianyu, she's a rare outstanding figure among the disciples of the same generation in the Archaic Alliance. Xianejia couldn't help but sigh. Although Foundation Establishment disciples weren't the decisive power of the Archaic Alliance, they still represented the future of each sect. A strong Foundation Establishment disciple meant that the sect had a strong foundation and a bright future. On the other hand, if the Foundation Establishment disciples weren't strong enough, then the future of the sect would be bleak. In the entire archaic underworld, the Thousand Blade sect had the amazing Ling Tianyu. The Snow Sword sect had the powerful Shui Jianfeng, and even Yi Ling's sect had the outstanding Duan Muyu. They were all the reserve forces of the Middle Island Alliance. On the contrary, the North Island Alliance was mediocre. It had been a long time since they had such a talented disciple. At this rate, after 100 years, when these people grew up one by one, it would be difficult for the North Island Alliance to maintain its status as an equal with the Middle Island Alliance. Xianijia was worried, but the situation on the field had changed in an instant. Duan Muyu's movement was unpredictable, and her opponent in the last round had suffered from it. But this time, her opponent was Lin Yi. After years of continuous improvement, the butterfly microstep's unpredictable movement was not inferior to Yi Ling's movement at all. In terms of speed, Duan Muyu's movement was far faster than hers. Duan Muyu originally wanted to seize the initiative with Yi Ling's movement, but before she could lock onto Lin Yi suddenly blocked the position behind her. The difference in movement was obvious. The eyes of the spectators brightened. As expected of a powerful figure who could suppress Ling Tianyu to the point of being helpless, Duan Muyu's strength was not weak, but it was not enough in front of Lin Yi. However, Shui Jianfeng still had a calm and confident smile on his face. Of course, he knew that Lin Yi was much stronger than Duan Muyu, but so what? The bet between him and Lin Yi was not about who would win or lose, but whether Lin Yi could lock on to Duan Muyu's movement. This was more than 1,000 times more difficult than winning or losing. Unless Lin Yi knew the mental cultivation method and movement of Yi Ling sect like the back of his hand, it was as difficult as ascending to heaven to achieve this. You are really strong, but it won't be so easy to defeat me. Duan Muyu glanced at Lin Yi, who was behind her. She knew that Yi Ling wouldn't be able to shake him off. Moreover, her chances of winning weren't high in the first place. If she kept dodging, she wouldn't stand a chance at all. As soon as she finished speaking, Duan Muyu opened her palm, and a withered leaf slowly fell. Chapter 5189. One falling leaf tells the world of autumn. Yi Ling's sect's moves are always so unpredictable, Xianijia said. Xianijia sighed. This move, falling leaves in autumn, could be considered as one of the few representative moves of the Yi Ling sect. It was not because it was the most powerful move, but it was simply because it was the most well-known move. Everyone nodded in agreement. Although Leaf Spirit sect was not the strongest primordial sect, it was definitely one of the most unfathomable primordial sects. Furthermore, it had firmly occupied the position of one of the 10 minor primordial sects and clans since a long time ago. Its strength was not to be underestimated. It was just that Leaf Spirit sect kept a low profile, giving off a feeling that it was not as eye-catching as Snow Sword sect. She can actually hide herself with just the intent alone, with no flaws at all. This Duan Muyu is so strong. Ziyu's eyes lit up. The others felt the same. Lin Yi had explained the arts and moves of Yi Ling's sect to them before, but they didn't understand it all. After all, Yi Ling's sect was too different from the other sections. Their moves were all about intent, and unless they could experience it themselves, they wouldn't be able to understand it no matter how much Lin Yi taught them. But now that they saw it with their own eyes, they had a direct understanding of the so-called intent of Yi Ling's sect. At the same time, they couldn't help but feel lucky that they didn't meet any Yi Ling disciples in the first round, or they wouldn't be able to use the counter moves that Lin Yi taught them. Actually, this wasn't strange at all. The Leaf Spirit sect was unfathomable. Due to the extremely unique aptitude requirements, there weren't many disciples in the sect. There were only 4 disciples participating in the secular world this time, and only one of them was at the early stage of foundation establishment. The chances of them drawing lots to meet each other weren't high. Yeah, her Yi Ling technique is already strong enough, and with this move, it's perfect. We can't even see where she is with the naked eye, let alone fight back, Ling Shan frowned. Luckily, her opponent is Lin Yi boss. If it were us, we'd just be sitting ducks, Chintian said happily. Hee, you guys are thinking too much. Duan Muyu is a perfected foundation establishment expert. What does that have to do with us? The ones we've met are at most early stage of foundation establishment realm. Even if they're Yi Ling disciples, They wouldn't be able to practice leaves knows the autumn to this degree, would they? Yubing couldn't help but laugh. You're right. Everyone looked at each other and smiled. While everyone was talking, Duan Muyu, who had concealed herself with the help of the falling leaves of autumn, was finally about to make a move. After all, this wasn't an invisibility technique. Even if one knew where it was very difficult to attack it. It was just like knowing which parts of a person's body were fatal. You couldn't hit them wherever you wanted. You had to have the strength to do so first. What did you say? Shui Jianfeng's expression immediately froze. He didn't expect Duan Muyu to admit it in public. He hurriedly said, Duan Muyu, did you receive a bribe from him? That's why you're deliberately putting on a show in front of us. Everyone looked at each other. Although such suspicion was a little biased, Duan Muyu had indeed admitted it a little too straightforwardly. No wonder people speculated that it was a conspiracy. The move Mingmin isn't a secret that no one knows about. As long as it's someone in the upper echelons of the Archaic Alliance with some qualifications, I believe it shouldn't be difficult for them to know. Moreover, when has my Yi Ling sect ever done things so vile? Duan Muyu said indifferently. Chapter 5190. Humph. One's position determines one's position. Lin Yi is also a member of your Blue Cloud sect. Uncle Master Xin must be biased, so your words may not be trustworthy, Shui Jianfeng argued. Preposterous. How dare you doubt me? Xin was furious. Shui Jianfeng was obviously provoking him. If it weren't for his identity as the leading Uncle Master, he would have taught him a lesson. At this time, Bing Wuqing suddenly said, I've also heard that the weakness of the falling leaves is indeed at the waist. F***ck. Shui Jianfeng almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He could twist words and force logic on Xianijia, but he couldn't possibly insist that Bing Wuqing's words were untrustworthy. After all, Bing Wuqing was on his side. Looking at Bing Wuqing's expressionless face, Shui Jianfeng wanted nothing more than to fall out with her on the spot. It was a pity that he did not have the strength nor the confidence to do so. After all, in terms of status, Bing Wuqing was above him in both the Snow Sword faction and the center. So, he could only shut his mouth resentfully. Now you have nothing to say, right? Lin Yi smiled faintly. Shui Jianfeng was speechless for a while. Since things had come to this, it was useless to say anything else. He could only snort to show his silent agreement. Hey, when are you going to put your hand down? Duan Muyu suddenly snorted. Only then did Lin Yi realize that his hand was still on Duan Muyu's waist. She might have the aura of a man, but she was still a girl, and a pretty one at that. He quickly pulled his hand back and smiled apologetically. I'm sorry. Other girls would be shy in this situation, but Duan Muyu didn't seem to care at all. Instead, she asked curiously, how do you know the weakness of the falling leaves? It wasn't strange that Lin Yi and the others knew the weakness of the Snow Sword sect. After all, there was Long Long. But now, even the Leaf Spirit sect knew it like the back of his hand. This was a little unbelievable. After all, Lin Yi was from the secular world. It's not strange. He's the granduncle of our Green Cloud sect in the North Island. It's normal for him to know about the situation of all the primordial sections. Xianijia explained. Really? Duan Muyu looked at Lin Yi doubtfully and did not say anything more. After this small disturbance, the grand competition continued. Shui Jianfeng, who had just been given the cold shoulder by Lin Yi, immediately displayed his prowess in the competition, beating his opponent to the brink of death with a single move. Clearly, he was using his opponent as a punching bag. Thus, one more great perfection heaven-ranked disciple was seriously injured and eliminated, leaving only 6 people. But this was within expectations. As the competition progressed, this kind of situation would only increase. Soon, after the Great Perfection Foundation Establishment Realm disciples, it was the peak Late Foundation Establishment Realm disciples. Although the most interesting representative, Ling Tianyu, had obtained the trial qualification in advance, there were still many highlights in this group. Among them, the most eye-catching was Long Long, who made a breakthrough in the middle of the last round. Coincidentally, Long Long's opponent this time was Liang Zhu, a disciple of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island. Although he was not the leading senior brother because of Xianijia, he was the strongest among all the Green Cloud sect disciples in the North Island. Looking at Liang Zhu, who stood opposite of Lung Long, Xianijia could not help but shake his head. Even if the leading senior brother was not a genius disciple, most of them were Great Perfection Foundation Establishment Realm experts. Unlike the one from the Green Cloud sect in the North Island, he looked ordinary and inconspicuous even in the Peak Late Foundation Establishment Realm group. How embarrassing. I hope this guy won't embarrass the Green Cloud sect in the North Island. Xianijia secretly smiled bitterly. Although Liang Zhu won the last round, he only won by a narrow margin against an opponent whose strength was at the bottom. The result was really unsatisfactory. He was the #1 disciple of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island. If he could not win 3 rounds in the end and was eliminated, it would be really embarrassing. Even Xianijia, the leading senior brother, would feel ashamed. Especially now, even though it was only the second round, his opponent was Cold, who had just broken through to the next level. Her strength was still far from being consolidated. Logically speaking, he should be able to take her down easily. If he still lost, not only would he be a laughing stock, his future would also be worrying. Please. Liang Zhu's expression was very dignified. In the eyes of others, this was just an ordinary duel. The most special thing was Long Long. Very few people could feel the huge pressure on him. Even Xianijia was only worried that he would bring shame to the sect. Only he himself knew the feeling of great pressure. To him, this was a battle that concerned his future, and it was an important battle that he absolutely could not lose. Please. Lung Long was slightly stunned. Although the trial competition was related to the qualification for the Archean trial, it was not a particularly important competition in essence. Generally, it was enough to deal with it normally. It was rare to see someone like Liang Zhu who was so serious. However, Liang Zhu's attitude also gave her a lot of pressure. After all, she had just made a breakthrough. She had not fully adapted to the strength of the peak of the late stage of Foundation Establishment Realm, let alone consolidating her strength. Now that she was facing Liang Zhu, strictly speaking, she was the one who was at a disadvantage. Affected by the two of them, the atmosphere of the audience began to become dignified. Everyone's voice gradually became lower, and their eyes were all focused on Long Long and Liang Zhu. They all secretly guessed at the same time, who will make the first move? It was reasonable to say that in this kind of competition, the stronger side would usually make the first move and seize the initiative. However, Liang Zhu's posture was as if he was facing a great enemy. For the first time, he took the initiative to take a defensive posture, which really made people's eyes pop out. Isn't this guy a little too cautious? Everyone could not help but look at each other. Just when they were stunned, Long Long moved and took the initiative to attack. The weapons of the Archean Snow Sword Sect's disciples were generally swords. Some would also choose weapons such as knives and spears. However, Long Long was an exception. So far, she had not specially practiced any weapons. Her only fighting method was close combat. Chapter 5191. Especially before she came out to the secular world, she was only at the early stage of foundation building. It was normal to not use a weapon at this level. There were many disciples who would start to practice a certain weapon when they reached the middle stage of foundation building. However, no one would have thought that in just 10 months, Long Long could rise all the way to the peak of the late stage of foundation building. Even her master would be shocked if he heard about this. So, Long Long became a complete anomaly in the immemorial Snow Sword sect. She was a master at the peak of the late stage of foundation building, but she didn't even have a weapon and could only rely on her fists and feet to fight. But even so, Liang Zhu didn't dare to take it lightly. Instead, he was very nervous, afraid that Lin Yi would teach Long Long some special moves to counter his Green Cloud sect. After all, there were so many examples before, he couldn't help but worry. What he didn't know was that Lin Yi only taught Lingshan and the others the counter moves. As for Long Long, she didn't do any homework in this aspect. The reason was simple, she didn't need it. The reason why Lin Yi spent so much effort to study the counter moves of each sect was purely because Lingshan and the others had just built their foundation not long ago. Their strength was too low. If they didn't use this method, it would be difficult for Lingshan and the others to qualify for the trial. But Long Long was different. With her talent and strength, it was not difficult for her to win 3 rounds. What Long Long needed the most at this stage was actual combat experience. If she used this kind of trick, she could win more easily, but it would be putting the cart before the horse. Linny naturally wouldn't let her do such a stupid thing. In the blink of an eye, Long Long had already swept her leg. Liang Zhu hurriedly dodged back subconsciously, but then he realized that the opponent was a disciple of the Snow Sword sect. If he dodged, wouldn't it be letting her become snow? Although there was a precedent like Lingshan, Liang Zhu didn't have the confidence to copy Lingshan's strategy. After all, if he didn't go through special practice, this strategy would not only be ineffective, but it would be easy to get himself into trouble if he wasn't careful. Moreover, Long Long and Lingshan were on the same side, so they must have been prepared. Liang Zhu reacted and immediately began to counterattack. In any case, he absolutely couldn't let Long Long Lian Shui continue. Otherwise, it would bode ill rather than well. Man! Xianege sighed helplessly as he looked at the scene. His response was obviously different from before. Although Liang Zhu was a peak late phase of foundation building and was much stronger than Lingshan and the others, but in terms of battle experience and potential, he couldn't even compete with Lingshan and the others, let alone Long Long, who was extremely talented. Liang Zhu's sudden attack was not out of Long Long's expectation. This time, it was Long Long's turn to retreat. However, she was prepared to advance by retreating. Liang Zhu couldn't even touch a strand of her hair in 3 consecutive moves. As a result, he was flustered and revealed a slight flaw. Long Long seized the opportunity and immediately whipped her leg. Bang! Liang Zhu hurriedly used the long stick in front of his body to block. Finally, he was barely able to block the strength of Long Long's whipping kick. Unfortunately, his chest was still scratched. Even if it was just a light scratch, it was enough for Long Long. Don't forget that she had the shattered ice physique. The restrictive effect of the snow style was very obvious. It was enough to reduce the speed of a person by more than 30%. However, compared to the unique talent of the shattered ice physique, it was nothing. Even though Long Long was far from truly developing the power of the shattered ice physique, after being scratched by her kick, Liang Zhu suddenly felt cold all over his body. He was caught off guard and his speed was suddenly reduced by a lot. It's over. Xianege shook his head speechlessly. He clearly knew that Long Long had the shattered ice physique, but Liang Zhu still let his opponent touch his body so easily. At the crucial moment, he even forgot to protect his body. How could he win like this? Facing an opponent like Long Long, no matter what kind of countermeasure was adopted, it was the basic common sense to maintain the protective true qi at all times. Because only in this way could he avoid the direct attack on his body and minimize the restrictive effect of the shattered ice physique. Otherwise, there was no way to fight at all. As expected, after Long Long's one move succeeded, she immediately launched a series of unceremonious attacks. Liang Zhu's speed was greatly restricted. Even if he wanted to escape, he couldn't. He could only brace himself to deal with her. However, in this case, how could he resist Long Long, who was getting more and more powerful? The situation suddenly turned for the worse. Everyone was shocked. Liang Zhu was supposed to have the upper hand in this battle. At the very least, they should be evenly matched. However, they didn't expect the situation to become like this all of a sudden. If it went on like this, it was only a matter of time before Long Long won this battle. Hee, the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island is really full of talents. I admire you. Shui Jianfeng sneered. Of course, he didn't want to see Long Long in the limelight. However, he also disliked Xianege and the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. It was not a bad thing to take this opportunity to ridicule them. Xianege snorted and didn't answer. It was not that he didn't want to refute, but Liang Zhu's poor performance really made him feel ashamed to refute. The sect was full of such mediocre disciples. The future of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island was really worrying. The other disciples of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island also felt ashamed. In this way, Liang Zhu's performance in the field suddenly became even worse. He was under a lot of pressure, so he performed so abnormally because of nervousness. Now, being pointed at by others, he became more and more nervous. Originally, he could only use 70% of his strength, but now he didn't even have 50%. The situation became completely one-sided. Liang Zhu could barely hold on for a while, but now he had no strength to fight back. The winner was about to be decided. I can't lose. I absolutely can't lose. Being forced to the point of no retreat, Liang Zhu began to become hysterical. He didn't care about Long Long's continuous attacks at all. He forcibly began to fight back crazily with the attitude of exchanging injuries for injuries. When the pressure reached the critical point, some people would completely collapse, or even become hysterical, while some people would be reborn like a phoenix in nirvana. Obviously, Liang Zhu was definitely not the latter. If Liang Zhu adopted this tough attitude of exchanging injuries for injuries at the beginning, it would be a wise strategy. After all, he had the absolute advantage in strength. Although it was inevitable that he would consume a lot of energy and even leave serious injuries, as far as this battle was concerned, his chances of winning were actually higher than Long Long's. Unfortunately, he didn't have such awareness. Chapter 5192. He was completely restricted by Long Long's broken ice physique. Long Long didn't give him a chance to fight head-on. In this case, even if Liang Zhu was in his peak state, he had no chance, not to mention that he had lost control of his emotions. The result was as everyone expected. Liang Zhu's hysterical and crazy counterattack didn't bring him a chance to turn things around. Instead, it only made Long Long more proficient and made him lose faster. Xianijia and the other disciples of the Green Cloud sect were speechless. Although Liang Zhu was not a genius disciple, he had always been steady. It was rare to see him perform abnormally. Today's performance was useless from beginning to end, which was something that had never happened before. It was really shameful in front of everyone. Thump! Liang Zhu was once again kicked out by Long Long, and he struggled for a long time without being able to get up. A normal person in his situation would have already chosen to admit defeat. Liang Zhu was not the kind of person who would stubbornly persist to the end, but at this moment, he had been struck out of his wits. Except for some subconscious movements, he had already completely forgotten about admitting defeat. Seeing Liang Zhu's state, Long Long couldn't help but frown slightly. She and Liang Zhu didn't have any relationship in the past or the present, so naturally, she wanted to stop. She didn't want to be ruthless, but Liang Zhu didn't want to admit defeat. She could only continue to fight until Liang Zhu admitted defeat or was knocked unconscious. Unexpectedly, just as Long Long was about to knock him out, her entire body froze all of a sudden. The aura around her began to surge wildly. The inexplicable aura made the surrounding people secretly shocked. Not only that, the crowd even felt that this scene was somewhat familiar. No way. Lin Yi was the first to react. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This girl was going to repeat the scene of her breakthrough on the spot. Soon, the other people also reacted. They looked at each other and cried out in shock. She's going to break through again? Didn't she just break through the day before yesterday? What's going on? One breakthrough after one match? Really? Even Xue Jianfeng was dumbfounded. In the last match, she broke through from the later stage of Foundation Establishment Realm to the peak of the later stage of Foundation Establishment Realm. If everything went well this time, she would break through from the peak of Foundation Establishment Realm to the great completion of Foundation Establishment Realm. Wasn't this leveling speed too exaggerated? Unbeknownst to him, Long Long had consumed a few supreme-grade foundation building pills that Linny had given her during her closed-door training for the past few months. Although she did not directly break through to the next level, it had left a huge amount of undigested medicinal power in her body. If it was just her usual cultivation, perhaps it would take a few months for the medicinal efficacy to be completely released. However, it just so happened that she was in time for the grand contest. Facing a strong opponent of the same level, especially in the tense atmosphere of the contest, Long Long's essence, qi, and spirit were all adjusted to the best state. Under such circumstances, it was easy for the medicinal efficacy to be released in advance. Naturally, the breakthrough on the spot would be a matter of course. Long Long. One Long Long. On one, Long Long. Linny knew about the inside story, but the others didn't. They thought it was purely because of Long Long's superb aptitude. She was more than a genius. She was a super genius among geniuses. For a while, Long Long's position in everyone's heart was raised by a lot. She was originally a genius disciple with a little fame. Now, she had become the leading figure of the young generation in the immemorial martial world, just like Ling Tianyu of the Thousand Blades flying together. The process of breakthrough could be long or short. If it was purely a good preparation, it might just be a matter of a blink of an eye. However, Long Long was breaking through for the second time in 3 days. No matter how much medicine was accumulated in her body, the whole process of breakthrough was difficult to be smooth. Just like now, Long Long's aura was obviously unstable. It seemed that even if she could break through successfully, it would take a lot of time. However, the crowd didn't show the slightest dissatisfaction. It was a rare experience for them to be able to see Long Long's legendary breakthrough in one match. This was an excellent topic for them to brag to others in the future. However, in the process of waiting, Liang Zhu, who had lost his soul, finally came to his senses. When he saw Long Long not far from him, he subconsciously made a counterattack, which immediately caused a burst of exclamation from the crowd. Bastard! A murderous intent flashed in Lin Yi's eyes. He was about to make a move to get rid of this reckless trash. However, before he made a move, Xianijia had already rushed into the field. Without hesitation, he raised his hand and slapped Liang Zhu away. Uncle Xian, what are you doing? Shui Jianfeng said with dissatisfaction. He couldn't wait for Liang Zhu to interrupt Long Long's breakthrough. At that time, not only would Long Long not be able to advance to the next level, she would also suffer a serious backlash. If she was unlucky, she might even lose her life. This was a great thing for him, but he didn't expect that it would be destroyed by Xianijia. Just as you can see, Xianijia's face was extremely gloomy at the moment. If Liang Zhu was only a disgrace to the Green Cloud sect because of his lack of strength, he would at most be ridiculed as a talent. However, now he actually did such a shameless thing. It was unbearable. If he didn't make a move and Liang Zhu interrupted Long Long's breakthrough, the entire Green Cloud sect of the North Island would be nailed to the pillar of shame and become the laughingstock of the entire archaic Jianghu. Not only that, it was bound to greatly offend Lin Yi. Xianijia even seriously suspected that if he didn't make a move first to slap Liang Zhu away, this guy might have already become a corpse. Uncle Xian, although you're the leader of the team, you're also the only referee of the contest. Is it appropriate for you to interfere in the process of the contest without any disguise? Shui Jianfeng sneered. In his opinion, this was a ready-made blackmail. Everyone looked at Xianijia. As a referee, he must always be an absolutely objective and neutral third party. Logically speaking, as long as the contest was not over, including Xianijia as a referee, no one could interfere in anything in the field. Even if Liang Zhu's sneak attack during Long Long's breakthrough was despicable and shameless, it was still allowed by the rules. Xianijia's action was indeed too arbitrary. Chapter 5193. This, Shui Jianfeng choked and forced himself to say, that's also against the rules. Well, if you insist, you can report it to the Archaic Alliance. Xianijia glanced at him. Shui Jianfeng snorted and gave up resentfully. Of course, he could not let go of Xianijia's weakness, but even if he really reported it to the Archaic Alliance, it would be useless, because this was human nature. Except for the shameless Liang Zhu, what Xianijia did was a happy thing for everyone else. The Archaic Alliance would never come forward to punish him, otherwise, it would be seen as encouraging Liang Zhu's shameless behavior. After a while, Long Long finally succeeded in breaking through. Under the envious gaze of the crowd, she officially advanced to the Foundation Establishment Perfected Realm and became the person who truly stood at the top of all the disciples of the Archaic Alliance. He had the shattered ice physique to begin with, and now, he had become a legend. Other than Ling Tianyu and Shui Jianfeng, there was no one else present who could compare to him. Even Duamu Yu and the others might be slightly inferior to him. This was the true meaning of having boundless prospects. Miss Lung Lung, I'm really sorry just now. I apologize to you on behalf of the Green Cloud sect of the North Island. Xianijia walked in front of her and bowed deeply with a solemn expression. Ah, Long Long was stunned. She was fully focused on breaking through just now, so she did not notice Liang Zhu's little action at all, and did not know what happened after that. It was only until Linny walked over and explained in a low voice that Long Long finally understood. She quickly said, Master Xian, you're being too serious. You don't have to apologize to me. Actually, I should be the one thanking you properly. No matter what, you're the one who protected me. Even if Xian Ijia did not step forward, Liang Zhu could not hurt Long Long at all. After all, Linny was watching. However, Xian Ijia still did her a big favor. No matter what his consideration was, Long Long was the biggest beneficiary. There was no doubt about this. Miss Long Long is too polite. That's what I should do. Xian Ijia smiled bitterly and nodded to Lin Yi. He then announced to the crowd that the competition would continue. The rest of the competition was uneventful, and a day later, it was Ling Shan and the others' turn. This time, most of them passed without any mishap. After the first round, they were much more used to the new level of foundation establishment, and the counter moves Lin Yi had taught them were much more proficient as well. Naturally, they were more at ease when facing opponents of the same level as them. This time, other than their own people, the only one who lost was Ziyu. This girl got Yubing in the first round and got a win for free. It looked like she was lucky, but it was actually a loss. If she had gone all out in the first round like the others instead of just going through the motions, she might not have lost the second round. Strictly speaking, her opponent wasn't that strong, and the only reason she lost was because she wasn't used to the early phase of foundation establishment and the atmosphere. She still had to pay the tuition fee. But this wasn't a bad thing. After this loss, Ziyu had matured a lot. Compared to success, most of the time, failure was more motivating. Especially for a little girl like Ziyu who didn't know how high the sky was, this experience was even more valuable. Linny smiled as he looked at Ziyu, who was training extra. This was good too. No matter how strong he was, he couldn't always protect everyone under his wing. If even the youngest Ziyu was starting to realize this, then the others wouldn't slack off either. After all, if they couldn't even beat Ziyu, then they'd really lose face. This was quite a pleasant surprise. In the third round, the number of people who signed up for the cross-level challenge was less than half of the second round. There were only 3 people in total. At this time, everyone had more or less understood each other. In order to succeed in challenging someone of a higher level, other than having sufficient strength, there was another crucial condition, and that was to catch the opponent off guard. Only then would it be possible for the stronger opponent to fail miserably. Otherwise, if everyone knew each other thoroughly, the originally small chance of victory would be even slimmer. Just like that, many of the disciples who had the impulse to challenge him gave up spontaneously. However, even though the number of people had decreased, the challengers had clearly become much stronger. Those who still had the guts to challenge him at this time were naturally not easy to deal with. Of the 3 cross-level battles, although only one of them succeeded in the end, from the looks of it, the other 2 battles were also evenly matched. The 2 challengers' chances of winning were actually not low. It was just that their luck was not too good, which led to them losing in the end. I didn't think so at first, but now that I look at it, the rules of this tournament are really cruel. One of the disciples sighed, and the others sighed as well. Even Lin Yi couldn't help but nod. There were a total of 6 people in the 3 battles, but there was only one winner out of the 6, and that was the challenger who succeeded in the cross-level challenge. As for the other 5, they probably didn't have a good ending. The one who succeeded in the cross-level challenge didn't need to be mentioned. According to the rules, he was already eliminated. As for the remaining 4, the results weren't as direct, but the process was too intense. All 4 of them were injured quite badly, and unless they had some strong elixir like the Great Recovery Pill, they wouldn't be able to recover in a short period of time. If this trend continued, not only would they not be able to win the 3rd round, but even the 4th and 5th rounds wouldn't be good either. If they lost all 3 rounds, they would naturally be eliminated. Just 3 rounds had eliminated 5 people. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that the rules were cruel. The higher-ups of the Archaic Alliance had racked their brains to come up with these rules. Those who were able to stand out under these cruel rules, no matter how strong they were, at the very least, they weren't weaklings unless they were extremely lucky. But then again, for a trial like the archaic trials that was full of chance, luck was also a part of one's strength. To put it nicely, luck was also a part of one's strength. Chapter 5194. Due to Longlong's breakthrough, the number of disciples in the foundation-building realm full cycle was restored to 8. Of course, this was only temporary. Everyone knew that this kind of competition would get more intense as time went on, and the probability of casualties would increase. Xianijia immediately began to draw lots for everyone. Everyone was looking forward to it. With Lin Yi, Shui Jianfeng, and Lung Long, the 3 gimmick characters, in addition to Duan Muyu and other powerful disciples from various sects, the battle between the disciples and the foundation-building realm full cycle would be interesting. Everyone would not miss it. In this group, the most anticipated match was none other than the pinnacle battle between Lin Yi and Shui Jianfeng. It was a pity that this round of drawing didn't fulfill everyone's wishes, but the result didn't disappoint them too much, because this time, Shui Jianfeng's opponent was Long Long, who had just broken through. Interesting, really interesting. Both of them are genius disciples of the Snow Sword sect, and they have a grudge against each other. This is a civil war in the Snow Sword sect. Everyone was delighted. They were the typical spectators. However, for Long Long, the result of drawing lots was not that fun. As a disciple of the same sect, she was quite familiar with Shui Jianfeng's strength. Although they were on the same level in name, she had just broken through to the foundation-building realm full cycle. Obviously, she could not be compared with Shui Jianfeng. This battle would not bode well for her. Long Long, you have to be prepared to admit defeat. This guy's strength is not what you expected. Linny suddenly pulled Long Long aside and reminded her softly. What do you mean? Long Long was shocked when she heard that. She indeed felt that the outcome of this battle was not optimistic, but she had the unique gift of the shattered ice physique after all. Facing Shui Jianfeng, who was also in the foundation-building Great Circle, it was not that she had no chance of winning at all. At least she still had a chance to fight. But Lin Yi's words clearly said that she would definitely lose. There's something I haven't told you. Actually, Shui Jianfeng's current strength is not in the foundation-building realm full cycle, but in the Gold Core realm, said Lin Yi. Gold Core realm full cycle? Lung Long was stunned for a moment. If her opponent was a foundation-building full cycle, she would definitely stand a chance against him. However, he was only a beginner-stage Gold Core cultivator. She quickly lowered her voice and exclaimed in astonishment, how could he be a beginner-stage Gold Core cultivator? Breaking through to the Gold Core realm was many times more difficult than breaking through to the Foundation realm. Even with the spiritual chi conditions of the Transition Islands, one had to have medicinal pills like the Gold Core realm. However, medicinal pills like the Gold Core realm could only be obtained after passing the sect's special test, and then approved by the Elders Guild after a discussion. Shui Jianfeng had clearly not passed the test, so how could he have the Gold Core realm? That's because he betrayed the Snow Sword School and secretly sought refuge with the Center. He consumed the medicinal pills given by the Center, which allowed him to recover his Dantian and Meridians. At the same time, his strength increased by a great deal. He broke through from great completion of Foundation establishment to early Gold Core stage. Linny explained. In order to prevent people from gossiping, he did not mention these things to the others previously. However, he had no choice but to say it in front of Cold. What? Cold was extremely shocked. Shui Jianfeng had always insisted that he was a traitor. She did not expect that he was the real traitor. Don't tell anyone about this first. Just pretend that you don't know anything. I'll explain the rest to you later. I have my own arrangements, Linny reminded. Cold was stunned for a long time before she finally digested this shocking inside story. She took a deep breath and nodded heavily. I understand. And you must be careful. Shui Jianfeng does not have good intentions. He will definitely find an opportunity to deal a heavy blow to you later. He might even take your life directly. So you must not force yourself. Surrender immediately when the situation is not good. Understand? Linny said seriously. He was very clear that Shui Jianfeng was already unscrupulous in order to strike him down. He had been thinking of ways to get people to deal a killing blow to Lingshan and the others. Although he did not succeed, this guy had never given up. Now that he had the chance to face Cold directly, he would definitely not give up. Don't worry. I know what I'm doing, Cold nodded. Hey, what are you two whispering about again? Can we start now? Shui Jianfeng shouted from afar. He finally had the chance to deal with Cold with his own hands. This was really a blessing from the heavens. He could not wait any longer. Cold and Lin Yi looked at each other. They immediately stepped into the arena and said indifferently, Please? Sure. Although both of us are disciples of the Snow Sword School, we have never really fought before. Shui Jianfeng smiled coldly with a playful expression. This was a matter of course. No matter how much Cold was valued by the higher-ups of the school, her strength level was still too low. She was only at the early stage of foundation building before she came out to the secular world to train. Shui Jianfeng, on the other hand, was at the full cycle of foundation building. Their strengths were not on the same level at all. Naturally, there was no point in sparring with each other. So what? Cold looked at him coldly. Then I'll take this opportunity to have a taste of your ice shatter physique. I hope you won't disappoint me too much, Shui Jianfeng said disdainfully. If it was in the past, he would still be a little afraid of Cold, who was at the full cycle of foundation building. However, it was completely different now. Same to you. Cold's expression was still as calm as usual. In the eyes of others, they would think that she was holding back her strength to defeat Shui Jianfeng. Even Shui Jianfeng was fooled by her. She secretly sneered in her heart. I'll let you taste the taste of despair later. After Xianjia's announcement, the duel between the two officially began. However, to everyone's surprise, there was not the fiery atmosphere that everyone expected at the beginning. Both Shui Jianfeng and Long Long did not act rashly. Both of them had chosen to strike after the other. Shui Jianfeng relied on his overwhelming strength advantage. To him, it did not matter whether he struck first or later. However, unless it was absolutely necessary, he did not want to expose his strength at the early stage of Gold Core. Therefore, he chose this strategy to force Cold to strike first. Then, he would wait for an opportunity to counterattack. This guy is a lot more experienced. Lin Yi could not help but raise his eyebrows at the scene. Chapter 5195. The situation made Long Long frown. She was also thinking of retreating in order to advance. After all, her strength was at a disadvantage. This was the most reasonable choice for her, but she did not expect Shui Jianfeng to be so calm. In the silent confrontation, the atmosphere suddenly became oppressive and tense. If one's willpower was slightly weaker, even a simple bystander would feel suffocated, let alone the two people who were confronting each other in the field. The longer the confrontation, the greater the pressure. When it reached a certain point, the pressure was enough to crush one alive. In the end, one would even lose the courage to attack and become a real defeated soldier. Of course, this was definitely not Shui Jianfeng's plan. What he wanted was not just a victory, but Long Long's life. If he really forced Long Long to admit defeat, it would be a complete failure for him. Finally, after the two of them confronted each other for the time it took to burn a stick of incense, Long Long finally took the initiative to move. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. With every step she took, her speed suddenly increased. After 10 steps, not only did her speed increase to the extreme, even her aura had also climbed to the peak. Smart. Xianjia's eyes lit up. The others did not understand it, but he understood the deep meaning behind it. Lin Yi nodded as well. Cold was indeed very smart. The confrontation just now wasn't a good thing for her. Due to the difference in strength between them, it was impossible for her to be more composed than Shui Jianfeng. On the contrary, it had unknowingly worn down his most important drive and confidence, to the extent that he had already lost before he even made a move. Anyone with a discerning eye could see the advantages and disadvantages. Naturally, Long Long herself was clear about it. However, this was her established strategy. She could not mess up the moment she started. Therefore, even if she had to bite the bullet, she could only confront Shui Jianfeng. When she reached the limit of her endurance for the time it took to burn a stick of incense, she did not rashly make the first move. Instead, she came up with this method to regroup herself. In just 10 steps, she had regained the peak aura she had when she fought with her opponent. To be able to do this under such huge pressure, Lung Lung was indeed not simple. If it was someone else, it would be hard for them not to collapse on the spot, just like Liang Zhu, who made a fool of himself in the previous round. You're quite something. Xue Jianfeng was also very surprised, but he immediately sneered disdainfully. Even so, it's still a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Can you stop it? Although Cold Lung's performance was eye-catching, it could not change the fact that she was forced to make a move. In terms of strategy alone, she had actually fallen into a passive position. Although he had yet to fully display the true strength of an early-stage gold core cultivator, even so, he was not a match for an ordinary foundation-perfected disciple. It was more than enough to deal with Long Lung's level of attack. Just like that, Lung Long had continuously attacked Xue Jianfeng for 20 times. Xue Jianfeng was still unscathed. Just when everyone thought that he was going to continue dodging in a playful manner, he suddenly unsheathed his snow sword. His first move was the Snow Sword Sect's iconic snow form. Xianjia's expression changed. Although Xue Jianfeng did not display his strength of an early-stage gold core cultivator, and the others did not notice anything unusual, Xianjia was an early-stage gold core expert. He could more or less sense something unusual, but he could not react in time. This guy is really full of confidence. Linny could not help but laugh and shake his head. Xue Jianfeng's snow form was indeed very sudden. In terms of power, it was considered top-notch among the foundation-perfected level. An ordinary person would not be able to withstand it. However, he was facing Lung Lung after all. Was this an ordinary opponent? Sure enough, Xue Jianfeng revealed his killing intent at this moment. However, Lung Lung seemed to be prepared for it. She had already retreated a moment before Xue Jianfeng struck. Xue Jianfeng was slightly stunned. He seemed to be a little surprised. The snow form was a technique that could easily reveal its flaws. His stunned reaction made the flaw even more obvious. Good chance. The spectator's eyes lit up. Chapter 5196. So careful. Aren't you a little too timid? Xue Jianfeng snorted. He had indeed miscalculated the snow-killing style in the beginning, but the obvious flaw that was exposed later was deliberate. He wanted to use this opportunity to bait Lung Lung into taking the bait. As long as Lung Lung advanced rashly, he had absolute confidence that he could kill her with one strike. At worst, he would just reveal his gold core realm in public. However, since Lung Lung insisted on not taking the bait, he dared not act rashly. Otherwise, if Lung Lung was lucky enough to escape but exposed his strength at the same time, his wishful thinking would be in vain. By then, Lung Lung would definitely admit defeat in public, and he would not have the chance to attack again. You talk too much nonsense. Lung Lung had already attacked again. Her attacks were as violent as the beginning, but she still could not hurt Xue Jianfeng at all. Is that so? You may not hear this nonsense in the future. For you, this might be your last life experience. Xue Jianfeng grinned meaningfully, and then kept his snow sword again, returning to the initial situation. He was now like a patient beast, waiting for the moment his prey showed a flaw, and then pounced on it. Before that, he had to keep his claws to avoid scaring his prey away. What is she doing? Bing Wuqing was secretly puzzled as she watched this scene. As a chess piece that Linny had secretly subdued, of course, he knew that Lung Lung must have known the difference in strength between him and the enemy. Logically speaking, there were only two choices in this situation. Either she admitted defeat as soon as the fight started, which should be the safest way to ensure her safety, or she chose to admit defeat after putting on an act for a while. This was more or less risky, but it could be used to numb Xue Jianfeng and let him continue to think that his strength had not been exposed. However, what Lung Lung was doing now had completely exceeded the level of putting on an act. All of her attacks seemed futile, but they were definitely not meaningless struggles. There had to be a reason behind it. It was just that Bing Wuqing couldn't figure out what exactly she wanted to do at the moment. It was normal that he could not figure it out. Other than Lung Lung herself, only Lin Yi knew the answer to this question, because he was the one who helped Lung Lung research and develop this trump card. In the blink of an eye, the two of them exchanged over a dozen moves. Just as Xue Jianfeng's patience was about to run out, Lung Lung suddenly asked, "How many moves have you made?" "What?" Xue Jianfeng was stunned. He subconsciously replied, 32 moves? That's enough. Lung Lung nodded. Then, she suddenly stopped moving and said faintly from 3 steps away, "I'll let you try out my new move, prison drawing." As soon as he finished speaking, Xue Jianfeng felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. As a disciple of the Snow Sword School, he had sufficient resistance to the cold, but at this moment, he truly felt what was called bone-piercing cold. This was no longer a problem of his movement technique being affected. If he could not break free in time, even he would definitely be frozen to death. Prison on the ground? Looking at Xue Jianfeng's strange posture of being frozen in an instant, everyone was collectively shocked. Each of them looked at Long Long as if they were looking at a monster. Could it be that all her previous struggles were not in vain, but in preparation for this prison on the ground? Upon seeing the situation, Lin Yi could not help but reveal a satisfied smile. Lung Long's biggest reliance was naturally her ice-shattering physique. However, she had never been able to truly unleash the power of her unique move. If she was still in the early stage of foundation building, it would not be a big deal. However, she was now in the full circle of foundation building after a series of breakthroughs, and was about to break through to the golden core stage. If she did not even have a basic trump card, it would be unjustifiable. Once she encountered a strong opponent, she would be at a great disadvantage. Therefore, Lin Yi had already begun to plan and design for Long Long a few months ago. After continuous attempts and improvements, it was only right before the start of the training tournament that the results were finalized. However, the opponents that Long Long encountered in the early stage of Golden Core stage were not strong enough, so it could not be used. It was only until she encountered Xue Jianfeng, a strong opponent in the early stage of Golden Core stage, that it could finally be put to use. By subtly integrating the characteristic of ice-shattering physique into her vital energy, and then using a special method to cause the vital energy to remain after it was released. As the vital energy itself was not strong, its lethality was not strong either. Naturally, a strong opponent like Xue Jianfeng would not pay attention to it. He would not notice that the residual vital energy was following him. When it accumulated to a certain extent, it would become a strange prison that followed him like a shadow. By the time Long Long fully unleashed the characteristic of ice-shattering physique, even Xue Jianfeng would not be able to withstand the bone-chilling coldness of the prison. Moreover, he could not shake it off even if he wanted to, nor could he escape from it even if he wanted to. This was the prison of drawing ground. Even though it was a newly created technique and there was still a lot of room for improvement in the future, the prison of drawing ground was enough to fully unleash the advantage of the ice-shattering physique. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was Long Lung's unique trump card. If she was only facing an opponent of the same level, Long Long did not have to go through so much trouble to cast the prison of drawing ground. She could easily release it in 3 to 5 moves. Its power was enough to freeze an opponent of the same level to death. However, Xue Jianfeng was an early-stage Golden Core stage expert. 3 to 5 moves were obviously not enough. That was why Long Long did not care about anything and used a total of 32 moves to create this extreme version of the prison of drawing ground. Long Long was initially worried whether this technique would be effective or not. After all, this was not an ordinary battle against an opponent of a higher level, but an actual battle against an opponent of a higher realm. Even the extreme version of the prison of drawing ground might not be effective. However, after seeing Xue Jianfeng's condition, her heart that was hanging in suspense was immediately relieved. It was not just effective, it was simply too effective. If Xue Jianfeng could not think of a way to break the prison of drawing ground in time, he would definitely be frozen to death on the spot after a while. Amazing! Bing Wuqing glanced at Lin Yi discreetly. Her heart was filled with reverence. Even though the prison of drawing ground was Long Long's unique technique, in her opinion, the one who was truly amazing was still Lin Yi. Compared to the prison of drawing ground itself, this unrestrained creativity was the truly fearsome thing. His profound understanding of vital energy was definitely not a realm that a mere foundation-building expert could have. Even Golden Core Stage and Nascent Soul Stage experts might not be able to have such a profound understanding. Thinking back to the miraculous abilities that Linny had displayed previously, Bing Wuqing could not help but be shocked once again. Who exactly was this person? Chapter 5197. This was under the condition that they did not know Xue Jianfeng's true strength. Otherwise, they would have gone crazy collectively. What a pity, it's still lacking a little. Lin Yi shook his head imperceptibly. He was also shocked that the confinement spell could be so powerful. However, it was Long Long's first time using it in public. She was still not proficient enough. She was still lacking if she wanted to strangle Xue Jianfeng, an early-stage golden core expert. As expected, as soon as Lin Yi's voice died away, there was a sudden change in the field. Xue Jianfeng let out a series of deafening roars. Then, the veins all over his body twitched violently. An unprecedented and inexplicable aura was released from his body. Everyone was stunned and looked at each other. Even Xi and Ijia cried out involuntarily, "Early-stage gold core." He's already in the early-stage gold core. Although with Xue Jianfeng's strength as the #1 foundation-building expert, it was only a matter of time for him to break through to the gold core realm. If it happened in the ancient underworld, they would at most be surprised and would not be so shocked. However, the problem was that they were in the transit islands. Where did Xue Jianfeng get his gold core, and when did he break through to the gold core realm? Why was there no movement at all? After a while, Xue Jianfeng finally moved freely again. It seemed that he had completely broken free from the prison on ground. His expression was terrible. He immediately pounced at Long Long with a ferocious look. In fact, it was no wonder that he was angry. This time, not only did he fail to take the opportunity to kill Long Long, but he was also forced to expose his gold core realm strength in public. To him, it was like going for wool and coming home shorn. I admit defeat. Long Long was already prepared for this. She immediately exited the field and shouted. According to the rules of the competition, as long as one of the two parties admitted defeat on the spot, they were not allowed to make any further attacks. However, Xue Jianfeng deliberately turned a deaf ear to it. Not only did he expose his gold core realm strength, but he was also frozen by Long Long's prison on ground. It was intolerable. Even if he had to break the rules, he had to kill her with one slash. Long Long was shocked. The extreme version of the prison on ground had consumed too much of her physical strength and vital energy. Facing Xue Jianfeng, who was like a mad beast, she had no strength to resist at all. However, before Xue Jianfeng could charge over, another figure arrived far faster than him. It was Lin Yi. Lin Yi had long guessed that Xue Jianfeng wouldn't leave the matter at that. With the strength of his primordial spirit now, even though he didn't have the confidence to fight against an Aurus Core stage expert that was a whole realm higher, he still had an endless amount of miraculous tricks up his sleeves. It was enough to deal with Xue Jianfeng. Damn it! Xue Jianfeng was taken aback by Lin Yi's speed. If it wasn't for the orders from above, he would have taken the opportunity to kill Lin Yi and Long Long, killing two birds with one stone. Stop! At this time, Xi and Ijia also intervened. He looked at Xue Jianfeng with full vigilance, as if he was facing a formidable enemy. If Xue Jianfeng was still in the great completion of Foundation Establishment realm, he naturally would not be so nervous. However, he had to be careful when facing an expert of the same level. If Xue Jianfeng really made up his mind to do something reckless, he, as the leader of the team, would be in trouble. Xue Jianfeng finally stopped. Xi and Ijia was also a strong opponent of the same level to him. Moreover, there was also Lin Yi, who was no less troublesome than Xi and Ijia. In addition to that, there was also Long Long's prison drawing. If he continued to force his way, he was destined to suffer a great loss. He had no choice but to stop. However, Xi and Ijia did not plan to let him go just like that. He scolded, "Long Long has already admitted defeat, but you still want to kill her. What's your intention? Do you really think that the rules of the trial competition are just for show? Are you trying to challenge the dignity of the entire Archaic Alliance?" Xi and Ijia, don't you dare put *T on my head. My ears were frostbitten just now, so I didn't hear it, Xue Jianfeng said indifferently. Since he had shown his strength of the early gold core stage, there was naturally no need to call Xionigia master. As an expert of the same level, he only needed to call Xionigia by his name. This was the custom of the archaic underworld. Really? Xionigia obviously did not believe him. If you don't believe me, why don't you have a taste of her prison of drawing? Xue Jianfeng snorted and curled his lips. What he said was a random excuse, but it was true that he was frostbitten by the prison of drawing. Moreover, it was not an ordinary injury. If he did not take good care of it, there would be repercussions. Of course, Xionigia would not believe his nonsense. However, since Xue Jianfeng had said so, he could not continue to insist. He could only go along with the flow and said, "Since you didn't hurt Lung Long, I'll turn a blind eye this time. You're on your own." Xue Jianfeng snorted and turned away without any appreciation. His priority now was to find a place to heal his injuries. It would be best if he could get some healing elixirs from the glasses professor. Unfortunately, everything was not going well for him. Not only did he fail to kill the people around Lin Yi according to his plan, but he was also injured due to his carelessness. Moreover, it was from the hands of Long Long, who had just reached the great perfection of Foundation Establishment realm. He really did not have the face to meet the glasses professor. Fortunately, he had won all 3 rounds and was qualified to participate in the trial. It would not matter even if he took his time to heal his injuries. The trial continued. Although the following duels also had a popular figure like Lin Yi, it was far less exciting than the first match because of his opponent. After all, Xue Jianfeng was a gold core stage master, and Lung Lung almost succeeded with the prison of drawing. It was a scene that had not been seen in the archaic alliance for decades. Even if it was a little dull at the beginning, it was still a rare classic duel. In comparison, the other duels of the great perfection of Foundation Establishment realm inevitably paled in comparison. Including Lin Yi's match, the remaining 3 duels of the great perfection of Foundation Establishment realm seemed to be lukewarm. Duan Muyu's match was relatively more interesting. Due to her loss to Lin Yi in the previous round, Duan Muyu's current record was 1 win and 1 loss. Therefore, this match was very important. It would be gratifying if she could successfully win, but if she lost, it would mean that she had to guarantee a complete victory in the next 2 rounds to qualify for the trial. Otherwise, she would be eliminated. Coincidentally, this time, her opponent, Lei Gong, also had 1 win and 1 loss. They were also determined to win this duel. If her opponent was Xue Jianfeng or Lin Yi, Lei Gong might choose to admit defeat early. After all, it was impossible for him to be a match for either of them. It was better to conserve his strength for the next round of duels. Chapter 5198. Lei Gong knew that he was not a weakling. Facing an opponent like Duan Muyu, it was not impossible for him to win. Especially in the second round, Lin Yi's method of cracking the scent of autumn had given him an excellent reference. It was no exaggeration to say that he had at least a 60% chance of winning. As expected, in this duel where he was determined to win, Duan Muyu used the signature move of falling leaves in autumn as soon as he came up. Under the chilling autumn tint, he instantly became invisible just like before. Haha, child's play. Lei Gong was prepared for this. Almost at the same moment when Duan Muyu's figure disappeared, he had already cut her waist with his hand, almost copying Lin Yi's method of cracking the move in the previous round. This hand knife did not focus on power but speed. As long as he could successfully cut Duan Muyu's waist, he would definitely win. Although there was a slight suspicion of imitating, it had to be said that his response was indeed a brilliant psychological attack. Moreover, his reaction and speed were sufficiently fast, and it was extremely easy for others to be caught off guard. However, to his surprise, his knife hand actually missed. His knife hand slashed across, but there was still nothing in front of him. In the next moment, a palm-sized dark steel leaf abruptly smashed into his back. Lei Gong was originally a huge, burly man, but after being hit by this leaf, he was actually sent flying on the spot, directly over the heads of the crowd and into the sea. In this way, he was naturally eliminated. A mountain of leaves. Xionigia's eyelids twitched. Although this move was far less famous than Scent of Autumn, It was one of the rare tough killer moves of the Yiling sect. Its power was top-notch in the foundation establishment stage. However, there were very few people in the Yiling sect who had truly mastered this move, so it was even more difficult for outsiders to see it. This was the first time Duanmu Yu had used this move in public. To be able to send a burly man like Lei Gong flying with one move, a mountain of leaves really lived up to its name. Seeing Duanmu Yu calmly walk to the side to meditate and recover her qi, everyone couldn't help but look at each other. This woman was as tough as a man, really not someone to be trifled with. With scent of autumn and a mountain of leaves, no one except for people like Lin Yi would be able to withstand it. The third round of the competition continued in an orderly manner. With the previous 2 rounds as a foreshadowing, the performance of the contestants in this round was significantly less probing attacks. They often used their trump cards right from the start, and the duels entered a white-hot stage right from the start. Basically, the winner could be decided in 2 or 3 moves. This way, they could save more stamina for the 4th and 5th round of the competition. It wasn't long before it was time for Lingshan and the others to go on stage again, and their performances were as dazzling as usual. Lingshan, Chen Tian, and the others won all 3 battles, getting the chance to participate in the test early. As for Kang Xiaobo and the others, they didn't win all 3 battles, but they managed to get 2 wins and 1 loss. The situation was pretty good. The only exception was Ng Ziyu. She was the only one who didn't have a good future. After 3 rounds, she won 1 and lost 2, and the only win was from Yu Bing in the first round. The other 2 were easily defeated by the Archaic Alliance disciples, and she couldn't use the counter moves Lin Yi taught her at all. If this continued, things wouldn't look good for her. Ziyu. Facing a situation like this, even Lin Yi didn't know what to do. He'd already done everything he could to come up with a counter move for the sects, and they only needed to memorize it in the exam room. But with Ziyu's situation, he couldn't possibly take the test himself, could he? Lin Yi bro, am I useless? Ziyu smiled bitterly. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat as he looked at her. Although the girl was still forcing a smile on her face, tears were already welling up in her eyes. She was just trying her best not to let them fall. No. Lin Yi shook his head, feeling a little heartache as he looked at Ziyu pretending to be strong. He regretted it a little. At her age, he should have let her stay in the common world and enjoy her school life. But now he wanted to bring her to the archaic trials. Wasn't he being too hasty? It seems like I'll have to stay here alone this time, Ziyu said desolately. When Lin Yi brought up the idea of letting everyone participate in the archaic trials, she was the one who was the most eager to go. But from the looks of things now, she basically had no fate with the archaic trials anymore. Don't give up, you still have a chance. Lin Yi comforted. Lin Yi bro, you don't need to comfort me. I know my situation the best. It's impossible for me to win the next 2 rounds. Ziyu smiled bitterly. She could have placed her hopes on luck, since if she were lucky enough to get her own people in the next 2 rounds, she'd be guaranteed a spot in the test. It was a shame that Lingshan, Wu Chentian, and the others who'd won all 3 rounds had gotten the spot prematurely, and in order to prevent them from affecting the fairness of the test, they weren't allowed to participate in the lot drawing anymore. The only people who had a chance were Xiaobo and a few others. Not only was the chance very low, but even if they did get their people, Ziyu wouldn't be able to ask Kang Xiaobo and the others to go easy on her. After all, even Kang Xiaobo and the others wouldn't be guaranteed a spot in the trials. Lingshan and the others looked at each other. They wanted to comfort her, but they didn't know what to say. Chapter 5199. Solo Training? Ziyu paused, surprised. Is there enough time to do it now? The counter moves they learned before were just a last-minute effort, and they only used 3 days to learn them all. But they were in the middle of the tournament, and even if they had 2 days in between, it was only enough for them to recover their qi and stamina. Where would they find the time for solo training? There's enough time. Of course there's enough time. This isn't something new, just a revision of the counter moves I taught you before. Lin Yi signaled for Ziyu to get on the boat and rowed it back to the Blue Cloud sect's private island. Revision? Would that work? Ziyu wasn't confident at all. She was a fearless person, but things like exams were the only thing she couldn't do. This competition was like a test to her, and her mind was blank the moment she entered the exam room. Even if she memorized the counter moves now, it wouldn't work when the time came. Don't worry, this isn't just revision. It's made for you. Linny smiled mysteriously. He'd found the problem now, and it wasn't hard to come up with a solution. Really? Ziyu only recovered now. She wasn't confident in herself, but in Lin Yi. If Linny dared to say something like this, then he must have a way to help her get through this. On the other side, everyone watched as the two rode away. Lingshan couldn't help but worry. Ziyu will be fine, right? Don't worry, she'll be fine with boss personally. We just need to wait and see, Chenian said without hesitation. The others looked at each other and smiled. Since Linny said he'd bring everyone to the primordial trials, he wouldn't leave Ziyu behind. He'd never disappoint them, not in the past, not in the future. In the fourth round of the competition, Xue Jianfeng, Lin Yi, and the others who had won all 3 rounds had qualified early. There were also some who had lost all 3 rounds and were eliminated early. Adding on the losers who had been heavily injured in the previous rounds, there were clearly fewer disciples participating in this round. For example, there were 8 people in the last round, but only 5 were left in this round. Without Xue Jianfeng and Lin Yi, this round wasn't as exciting as before. Lung Long and Duanmu, you were the only ones left. The former was a genius disciple who almost used prison formation to turn the tables on a golden core master, and the latter was a senior sister who was slowly showing off the strength of Yiling's sect. Both of them were beauties too, so it was a rare sight to see. Unfortunately, the 2 women did not encounter each other this time. However, what surprised everyone was that whether it was Cold or Duan Muyu, they should be considered as the top existence among the remaining perfected foundation establishment experts. However, in the end, both of them were defeated at the same time. As a senior elder of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island, he had presided over at least 80, if not 100, big or small competitions. He knew that in the middle and late stage of the competition, a lot of physical and chi would be consumed, and the spirit would unconsciously relax due to exhaustion. Therefore, it was the easiest time for accidents to happen. It wasn't strange for dark horses to appear again and again. A day later, it was finally the turn of the group in the early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm in the 4th round of the competition. As the number of participating disciples decreased significantly due to various reasons, the process of the competition sped up a lot. The first round still needed 2 whole days to finish, but in the 4th round, it only took less than a day to finish all the previous matches. If Xianigia hadn't deliberately left some time for everyone to rest and recuperate between each group's matches, the time would be even shorter. After all, not only the number of matches was far less than before, but because everyone deliberately reduced the probing, the time of each match was also greatly shortened. This was a matter of course. Chapter 5200. Linny said he was going to train Ziyu for 2 days. But it wasn't even 2 days, and it was already time to draw lots. Didn't that mean that they'd forfeit and be eliminated? But it's too late now, right? Man, we've miscalculated. Yu Bing frowned. They should have realized this a long time ago, but because they trusted Lin Yi too much, they thought that something like this would be within Lin Yi's calculations. They forgot that the timing wasn't controllable, and even Lin Yi couldn't have predicted that it would be the Foundation Establishment Group's turn so soon. No matter what, I'll go find Boss and the others now. As long as I don't get the first match, it should be fine. My luck shouldn't be that bad, right? Chuntian left. But before he could take 2 steps, Xianijir announced, Foundation Establishment Early Phase, First Match, Common World Ing Ziyu against Snow Sword Sect's Luo Shasheng. Huh, what's going on? Chuntian almost fell flat on his face, and Ling Shan and the others all had a pained expression on their faces. What should they do? At this time, Luo Shasheng was already walking onto the stage with a ferocious aura, looking at Ling Shan and the others with a vicious smile. He'd lost to Ling Shan's miraculous counterattack in the first round, and Ling Shan's attack had indeed hit his vitals, but it wasn't that heavy. Luo Shasheng had already recovered by the time the second round started, and he didn't meet anyone from Lin Yi's group in the next 3 rounds. Among all the Foundation establishment disciples from the Archaic Alliance, Luo Shaxing's strength wasn't top-notch, but he was still a disciple of the Snow Sword sect who could control the snow aspect. His strength wasn't to be underestimated, and as long as his luck wasn't too bad, he could beat most of his opponents. But perhaps because of Lingshan, Luo Shaxing's strength had recovered, but his condition was affected quite a bit. He won one and lost one in the next 2 rounds, and while he wasn't directly eliminated, he had 1 foot on the edge of a cliff. There was no going back now. What a coincidence. It's a shame that it's not Lingshan, but at least it gives me a chance to get my revenge. I can't wait. Luo Shaxing looked at Lingshan, a little regretful. He couldn't accept losing to Lingshan like that in the first round, and he'd been dreaming of meeting Lingshan again in the next few rounds, but he didn't have the chance. He could only vent his anger on Ziyu now. Lingshan and the others glared at him furiously. If it weren't for the tournament, they'd definitely teach this guy a lesson. If it weren't for Lingshan going easy on him last time, he'd be a dead man by now. How dare he talk big like that? That was what he said, but it'd be a lie to say that he wasn't worried at all. With Ziyu's performance in the last few fights, this Luo Shaxing wouldn't stand a chance against her, especially since this guy had a grudge in his heart. He wouldn't let Ziyu give up so easily. The tournament begins. Disciples, please enter the stage. Xi and Ejia saw that Ziyu wasn't entering the stage, so he turned around to urge her, but he didn't see her anywhere. He'd been interacting with Lingshan's group for the past few months, and he could still recognize her. He blinked. Where's Ziyu? Under normal circumstances, all the disciples would wait at the side, no matter if it was time to go up or not. Even if they won all 3 fights and got the right to go up early, other than the heavily injured ones, most of them would stay here to watch the others fight. This was the first time someone like Ziyu, who was clearly uninjured, had disappeared. Lingshan and the others looked at each other. She's going back for a bit, but she'll be back soon. Please wait for a bit. Then, all right. Xi and Ejia nodded. This might not work if it was someone else, but Ziyu was Lin Yi's follower. She was his senior master, after all, and he had to give her some face. Luo Shaxing snorted discontentedly, but he dared not say anything more. He was not a big shot like Xue Jianfeng. He was merely a disciple in the early stage of Foundation establishment realm. How would he dare to put on airs in front of Xi and Ejia, a gold core stage master uncle? Therefore, he could only endure it. Lingshan and the others breathed a sigh of relief, quickly sending Chuntian to inform Lin Yi and Ziyu. However, this place was quite far from the Blue Cloud Sex Island, and they had to row a boat. They wouldn't be able to get there without 2 incense sticks worth of time. Even Xi and Ejia wouldn't be able to waste this much time, so he had to try his best. After the time it took to burn a stick of incense, the other disciples of the Archaic Alliance were getting impatient. If it was a big shot like Lin Yi who made them wait for so long, it would be understandable. However, it was just a weak little girl. Xi and Ejia, as the leader of the team and the judge, was being so biased. Wasn't he being too selfish? Master Xine, we've waited long enough, right? If she doesn't come, are we supposed to keep waiting like this? Luo Shaxing finally asked. Yeah, according to the rules, anyone who doesn't show up on time forfeits. Waiting for an incense stick's worth of time is the limit. The flowers will wilt if we wait any longer, the others all agreed. That's... Xi and Ejia looked at Lingshan and the others, troubled. From his perspective, he had tried his best, and he could only give a helpless expression. Since that's the case, then I'll announce that Ziyu has been late for too long, and will forfeit. Before he could finish, Ziyu's voice came from not far away. Sorry, I'm late. That's great. Seeing Lin Yi and Ziyu appear together, Lingshan and the others let out a breath of relief. Even Xi and Ejia was the same. Only Luo Shaxing was a little disappointed. He wanted to use this chance to vent his anger on Ziyu, but in comparison, the test was more important. If he could win without any effort, then he'd be able to maintain his peak condition for the 5th round, and he'd have a much higher chance of entering the test. I'll be going then. Ziyu was no longer as nervous as before, smiling confidently as she raised her hand to Lin Yi. Okay, good luck. Lin Yi high-fived her. Chapter 5201. She's just a flower vase with no strength at all. Where's that confidence coming from? Luo Shashing curled his lips in disdain. Ever since he lost to Ling Shan, he'd been paying close attention to Lin Yi's group. After all, they were very likely to be the opponents they'd be drawn against, and he'd seen their performance from start to finish. If it were Ling Shan and the others, he'd be worried. But since it was Ziyu, the weakest of them all, there was no need to worry. Ziyu will be fine, right? Ling Shan worried. She knew Luo Shashing's strength the best. He wasn't an easy opponent at the early phase of foundation establishment. If she didn't fully grasp the counter moves Lin Yi taught her, she'd have a hard time. Ziyu, Lin Yi paused and smiled meaningfully. She's actually quite strong. Ling Shan and the others paused, looking at each other. Lin Yi's standards had always been very high, and he'd never even commented on their performance like this before. Could Ziyu be an unparalleled genius for him to say that she was strong? At this time, the battle officially started. What surprised everyone was that Ziyu didn't follow the tactics and counter moves Lin Yi taught them, choosing to go on the offensive right from the start. This scene didn't just surprise everyone. Even Luo Shishing was shocked. But then he sneered. If you want to take the initiative, then you need to have the strength to do so. Do you have it? Luo Shishing smiled coldly, and his signature weapon, the slaughter blade, came slashing down. Ziyu, however, was expecting it and dodged to the side, throwing a punch at his face. Luo Shishing was shocked. Ziyu was hitting his life point. How was that possible? If it was the snow-killing style, the most famous style of the snow sword faction, it was still acceptable for someone to lock on to his vital point. However, the traceless snow that he was using now was just an inconspicuous style. How could this woman have predicted it? She couldn't say that it was her spontaneous reaction, could she? That reaction speed was just too astonishing. Moreover, could an ordinary person study the moves of the Snow Sword School so thoroughly? Even the disciples of the Snow Sword School themselves might not be able to lock onto the vital points of the moves so quickly, right? Luckily, Traceless Snow Ground's flaw wasn't as obvious as Snow Kill, and Luo Shashing quickly changed his move. Ziyu didn't, still hitting the same spot, but Luo Shashing easily blocked it. Does this woman not know how to be flexible? Luo Shashing paused, and before he could react, Ziyu followed up with another attack, this one even faster than before. But this time, she didn't lock on to the life gate. Luo Shashing quickly blocked again, but he didn't even have time to stop before Ziyu's third attack came even faster. She didn't lock on to the life gate as well, and it looked like a normal body part. Why did she choose such unimportant positions? What is this woman doing? Luo Shashing was a bit stunned. Ziyu's attacks were abnormally fast, but they were easy to block. There was no threat at all. It was just that he had failed against Ling Shan before, and even if Luo Shashing looked down on Ziyu from the bottom of his heart, he didn't dare let his guard down against this random series of attacks. With the mentality of playing it safe, he started to defend. 7 to 8 moves in a row was the same, and Luo Shashing was getting impatient. He'd seen through Ziyu already, and as weak as she was, everything before was just a bluff. With a thought, Luo Shashing started to counterattack, but before he could even do it, Ziyu was already going for his life gate. He almost pissed his pants, going back to his defensive stance. Ling Shan was a bit weirded looking at Ziyu's actions. She seemed to be using the counter moves Lin Yi taught her, but not completely. Other than the first move and this one, the rest weren't specific to the Snow Sword sect. Other than the Snow Sword sect, Ziyu seems to be using the counter moves of the other ancient sects as well. Boss, what's going on? Yu Bing finally saw what was going on and asked softly. Chen Tian and the others came to a realization. No wonder Ziyu's moves looked so familiar. They were the moves of the ancient sects, but they were all mixed together, so it didn't look like they belonged to the same sect. As you can see, it's a mixed version of the ancient sect's counter moves. Lin Yi smiled. This was something he'd come up with just for Ziyu, since she'd shown that she was a test addict. Getting her to use a counter move on the spot like the others was a very hard thing to do, and so he came up with this idea. He didn't need to think too much about it, he just needed to use all the moves in the sparring, and it'd be much easier that way. But is this going to work? Ling Shan said, Confused, Ziyu did seem to be able to scare the opponent, but she didn't hurt him at all. She'd be seen through sooner or later anyway, and this stance was just a waste of chi and stamina. She didn't see any chance of winning at all. Yeah, when you're not as strong as the opponent, it's very easy to see through Ziyu's moves, so you have to defend and counterattack. Isn't that what you taught us, boss? Chuntian said. That's normal, but take a good look at Ziyu's movements. Linny reminded. Everyone looked closely at Ziyu's performance, and Yubing reacted after a while. She seems to be lowering the power of her moves to increase her speed. More accurately, she has no choice but to lower the power of her moves. That's right. As the saying goes, there's nothing that can't be defeated by speed. Speed doesn't just refer to the speed of one's movements, but also the speed of one's attacks. When the speed of one's attacks reaches a certain level, the opponent won't be able to react in time, achieving the goal of attacking instead of defending. So, I taught her a whole new fighting style, instant strike. Chapter 5202. Instant Strike? Everyone was shocked. Yes, it's a fighting style that ignores everything else and focuses on speed. Once you get caught up in a fight like this, you won't be able to fight back normally. You'll only be able to attack halfway, and the opponent will have already attacked. Linny said, "Wow, that sounds really strong." Everyone was shocked, but then they started complaining. Boss is too biased, isn't he? He's only teaching Ziyu something this strong and not us. Haha, I can teach you anytime if you want, but it's just a fighting style. It's not suitable for everyone. Linny said as he looked at Ziyu. He didn't know much about the others, but this girl's speed was surprisingly fast, as if she was born for instant strike. The two were still fighting, and it was as Linny said, Luo Shashing was completely locked down by Ziyu. His life killer blade couldn't unleash its full power when he was in close range, and Ziyu was using a close-range instant attack. Even if it was just a fledgling form, it was enough to catch someone off guard for a foundation establishment practitioner like that. Instant strike really is effective. That guy can't find a chance to fight back at all. He's really being led by the nose. Chuntian's eyes lit up. Yubing, however, still frowned. That's true, but Ziyu isn't really threatening him yet. He'll run out of stamina soon, won't he? Instant strike is a fighting style that allows you to gain the upper hand as long as you're in close range. But the downside is that each attack will be greatly weakened, and the stamina and chi will be used up quickly. It's not suitable for a long fight. Linny said, "Doesn't that mean Ziyu's in danger?" Ling Shan said worriedly, "You're wrong. I suddenly realized that Ziyu has a very strong trait yesterday, very suitable for instant strike. You'll understand if you keep watching." Linny smiled mysteriously. A very strong trait? Everyone paused, staring at Ziyu's performance. They didn't notice anything out of the ordinary, but slowly, their faces changed. This fight had been going on for the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, and with Ziyu's speed, she shouldn't be able to hold on much longer. Her attacks should be slowing down, but she was acting the exact opposite. Not only that, but from Luo Shashing's movements, his attacks were much stronger than before. How could that be? Everyone was puzzled. The more he fights, the stronger he gets. Ziyu seems to have this type of constitution. Linny explained with a smile. Normal people would get weaker and weaker as they used up their stamina, but there was a type of person who could unleash strength far beyond normal. Ziyu looked weak and petite, but she had this kind of strong body. It wasn't a coincidence that she was a delinquent girl in the past. It was in her genes. A constitution that can unleash strength in the later stages? Everyone was shocked. Instead of being happy, Luo Shashing was shocked. His desperate move was just a facade. He wanted to use the snow-killing style to bait his opponent. In fact, he did not intend to use the snow-killing style at all. From the moment he started to use it, he was ready to change his move. If she could not recover in time, she might repeat the mistakes of the fourth round. That would be troublesome. Linny bro, why don't you give Cold Sis a private training session too? Wouldn't that be great? Ziyu suggested. She was a living example, and with Lin Yi's level and judgment, the effect of a private training was unquestionable. Sure. Lin Yi nodded and turned to look at Lung Lung. Based on the current situation, there's still a lot of room for improvement, whether it's prison formation or other aspects. We should be able to gain something with targeted special training. What do you think? That, Cold hesitated and shook her head firmly. Don't bite off more than you can chew. I haven't even stabilized my foundation establishment level yet, and I haven't mastered ground prison yet, so I think we should leave the training for later. This time, I want to overcome it with my own hard work. All right then, I believe you. Good luck. Lin Yi patted her shoulder lightly. Although it was a little risky to do so, he felt very gratified. Just like what Cold had said, it was better not to bite off more than one could chew. It was commendable for her to realize this. In the 5th round of the trial, no one chose to challenge someone of a higher level. After all, those who stayed until this round were disciples who had gone through 4 rounds of intense battles, with 2 wins and 2 losses. There was no room for accidents anymore. Instead of choosing to challenge someone of a higher level, they might as well participate in the 5th round. At least this way, the difficulty would be lower, and they would have a higher chance of qualifying for the archaic trial. There were only 4 foundation establishment level complete practitioners left, and when Xi and Ijia drew out the first group, everyone was shocked. Their eyes focused on the 2 in the field, Cold against Duanmu Yu. Oh, looks like I've gotten myself into a good show. Xue Jianfeng smiled with great interest. After a few days of recuperation, the frostbite left by Cold's extreme version of confinement prison had completely healed. However, because of this, he couldn't be present to supervise the battle these few days. Hence, he couldn't specifically target Lin Yi's group. Otherwise, they wouldn't have passed so smoothly. Fortunately, the result of the draw did not disappoint him. Although he had to admit that Cold's strength was indeed not to be underestimated, especially that prison drawing was even more shocking. It was difficult for an average master of the same level to contend against it. However, Duanmu Yu was not an ordinary character. Moreover, from the previous match, Cold's condition was not considered good. The odds of winning against Duanmu Yu in this match was not high. If Duanmu Yu could eliminate Cold, although it was barely satisfactory for Xue Jianfeng, it could be considered as a consolation. At this moment, not only Xue Jianfeng, but the rest of the crowd also revealed an expression of watching a good show. After all, this was a rare showdown. Both sides were the hot topic, especially since this was the final showdown. No matter what the result was, one side was bound to be eliminated on the spot. Who would it be? Please. Cold took the lead and bowed slightly to Duanmu Yu. Please. Duanmu Yu, on the other hand, made a gesture of invitation. She looked calm and composed on the surface, but she was secretly on guard in her heart. She warned herself that no matter what, she could not let the opponent use the painted confinement. Even Xue Jianfeng, a beginner stage gold core expert, almost suffered a calamity. If she was the one trapped, then everything would be over. After the greeting, the atmosphere in the field suddenly began to become extremely tense. The crowd at the side did not even dare to breathe, quietly waiting for the 2 to officially start. Chapter 5204. She wants to end the fight quickly? Duanmu Yu was shocked, but she was not surprised. Since she had already run out of true qi in the previous round, it was impossible for her to fully recover even after 2 days of rest. Especially when facing a strong opponent, ending the battle as soon as possible could be said to be the only choice. In fact, it wasn't just Cold. Duanmu Yu had the same thought. She was facing the same predicament as Cold. If she couldn't think of a way to end the fight quickly, it would be hard to predict how the situation would develop. Bam! Both of them launched their kicks at the same time, but neither of them touched the other because they were aiming for the other's vitals. This had nothing to do with the Mingmen of the moves. It was a direct way of exchanging lives for lives. Everyone gasped in unison, stunned. Even if the outcome of this fight was directly related to the qualification to enter the Archean trials, there was no need to fight so desperately right from the start, was there? Ling Shan and the others' hearts skipped a beat. Even Lin, he couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Fortunately, both of them didn't really exchange lives for lives. They both chose to pull back their legs at the last moment. Just when everyone let out a sigh of relief, the same scene happened again. Everyone's hearts were in their throats again. They only relaxed when the two of them separated again. It was like a roller coaster. This isn't good. I'm afraid it'll go against the strategy of ending the fight quickly if this goes on. Duan Muyu looked at Cold, who was charging at her with a serious face. She frowned as she used the method of exchanging lives for lives to force her to retreat. She had no other choice. She didn't dare to take Cold's moves head-on because she was afraid of the legendary Ice Shatter physique. Otherwise, even if she had chi protection, she would be gradually affected. Once her speed was limited, she would be trapped. Therefore, she could only use such a method to force Cold to retreat. However, it would gradually evolve into a battle of physical strength and vital energy. The situation would go out of control after a while. If the situation was still the same, she might not be able to hold back her attack, and it would really turn into a mutual destruction. Seeing that Cold was attacking again, Duan Muyu changed her strategy. A withered leaf fell from her palm, and she disappeared. The bleak autumn atmosphere instantly swept across the field. The fall of a leaf signified the beginning of autumn. Here comes the show. Everyone's spirits were lifted. According to Duan Muyu's previous habits, after falling leaves indicates autumn would be followed by a leaf like a mountain, and the winter would be decided soon. Unexpectedly, at the same moment, a bone-chilling coldness enveloped the entire place, and the source was Long. Prison on the ground? Everyone was shocked again, and they looked at each other. But we can't even see Duan Muyu's figure. Even so, he can still use Prison of Drawn Ground? Furthermore, it covers such a large area. Isn't this too exaggerated? Although it's a prison with herself as the target. Cold is really going all out this time. Lin Yi could not help but smile when he saw that. In theory, Prison on the Ground would only be used when the opponent was locked. However, under special circumstances, it could also target Cold herself like what she was doing now. The Shattered Ice Constitution had a magnifying effect on this, which was enough to expand the range of Prison on the Ground by several times. However, even Cold herself would suffer from frostbite, just that it would not be as serious as the average person. Everyone had yet to understand what was going on, but for safety's sake, Xianijia once again led the crowd to retreat a good distance. Everyone only stopped when they were almost at the shore, for fear of being accidentally hurt by Cold's Prison on the Ground. Cold's surroundings were empty, and not a single figure could be found within a radius of 100 meters. However, everyone knew that Duan Muyu must be hiding in this open space, waiting for the opportunity to kill in one hit. However, where was she? Everyone, including Xianijia, was trying their best to find Duan Muyu's figure. However, it was destined to be useless. Duan Muyu had used it at least 3 times in the first 4 rounds of the competition. Unless she took the initiative to show herself, otherwise, even a beginner gold core expert like Xianijia would not be able to locate her position. If it was really that easy to be broken, Yi Luoji of Autumn would not have become the signature of Yiling's sect. Of course, Lin Yi was the only exception. Yi Luoji of Autumn could deceive beginner gold core experts, but it would be too fake to deceive someone at his level. It was a pity that Cold was not Lin Yi. Everyone could not detect Duan Muyu's position, and neither could she. That was why she used Prison on herself. Otherwise, she would not have to take such a risk. This Cold is really strong. Duan Muyu frowned when she saw this scene. She had indeed concealed herself with the help of the fallen leaves of autumn, but she could only hide from the other party's senses. She could clearly feel the bone-chilling coldness. In fact, because of the bleak autumn, she could feel it much more clearly than others. This bone-chilling coldness could really kill someone. This was not surprising. What really surprised Duan Muyu was that the power of Prison on the Ground could be raised to such a level in just 3 moves. It almost completely overturned her previous judgment. Duan Muyu was definitely one of the people who observed the battle between Cold and Xue Jianfeng the most attentively. After all, both of them were very likely to be strong opponents that she would have to face. As the leading senior sister of Yiling's sect, Duan Muyu's observation skills were absolutely top-notch. This was the minimum requirement to enter Yiling's sect. Although she had only seen it once, she could already see some of the tricks of prison on the ground. Duan Muyu knew very well that this was a powerful killer move that needed to be laid down. The more laid down, the more powerful it would be. It was also because of this judgment that Duan Muyu was very determined to end the battle quickly from the beginning. Not only could she avoid the risk of overdrafting her vital energy and physical strength, but she could also restrain her opponent's most feared prison on the ground. It was killing two birds with one stone. If it was not for the fact that her Yiluoji of Autumn also needed a certain amount of time to accumulate, Duan Muyu would definitely have used it immediately. Of course, it was within the acceptable range if she could only deal with her opponent for 3 moves. However, she did not expect Cold's prison on the ground to reach such a level after only 3 moves. It was even stronger than when she was fighting against Xue Jianfeng. In that case, could it be that her previous judgment was completely wrong? Duan Muyu's confidence could not help but waver. After all her speculations were based on appearances. To be honest, it was not easy to come to such a conclusion after only one observation. Unfortunately, she did not know the principle of prison on the ground. Chapter 5205. Even so, Duan Muyu did not reveal any flaws. She adjusted her strategy in an instant and prepared to snatch the attack. Falling leaves of autumn and one mountain-like leaf. This was the most common and most threatening combo move. It was also Duan Muyu's original plan. However, just like the falling leaves of autumn, this powerful and overbearing move needed time to charge up. Everyone knew about this routine, but it was still impossible to defend against it because no one knew where and when the attack of one mountain-like leaf would come from. The problem now was that she was affected by the bone-chilling cold of the painted ground prison. Duan Muyu discovered that the vital energy in her body was beginning to show signs of stagnation. If this continued, she would not be able to use her mountain leaf again. Instead of sitting on the ground and waiting for death, she might as well give it her all. A thin iron leaf appeared above Long Long's head out of thin air. It pressed down with an incomparably heavy and majestic aura. One mountain-like leaf. Boom. The iron leaf was only the size of a palm, but it left a clear leaf print the size of half a basketball court on the ground. The depth of the print was as high as a person's height. It was astounding. Lingshan and the others screamed when they saw this. Didn't this mean that Long Long was crushed to death by the one mountain-like leaf? However, they immediately breathed a sigh of relief because Long Long had already rushed out from the leaf print. Although she was obviously injured, judging from her current state, the injury should not be too serious. Is this guy made of iron? Someone could not help but exclaim. The others were also confused. They had seen the power of one mountain-like leaf with their own eyes. A foundation perfection perfected expert was blown away on the spot. Even if Long Long's strength was stronger than a foundation perfection perfected expert, she should not be able to jump around after taking on the one mountain-like leaf. This was too ridiculous. Xue Jianfeng snorted when he heard that. Most people could not understand the scene just now, but as a Golden Core Realm expert, he saw it clearly. Duan Muyu's one mountain-like leaf was indeed powerful. A normal foundation perfection perfected expert would be courting death if he took it head-on. It was the same for Long Long. However, Cold Long did not take the attack head-on. Instead, she had already stepped on the ground and shrunk herself before the mountain-like leaf came crashing down. Instead of saying that the mountain-like leaf's power had landed on her body, it would be more accurate to say that most of the power had been absorbed by the ground. That was why she was able to sustain such a light injury. Xue Jianfeng secretly felt that it was a pity. He couldn't wait for Cold to be beaten to death by Duan Muyu. He didn't expect that she actually escaped this calamity. Oh no. From her standpoint, it was already benevolent of her to give her opponent the chance to admit defeat. Since Duan Muyu insisted on fighting till the end, she could only fulfill his wish. Without another word, Long Long immediately gave her opponent the final blow. At this moment, both of Duan Muyu's arms were frozen numb. Even the movement of slipping out from the withered leaf seemed very clumsy, let alone fighting back. However, before Long could land her attack, Duan Muyu's body suddenly erupted with an incomparably strong vitality. As if it had materialized, his entire body was emitting a dazzling light. The withered leaf has turned green? Linny looked at the withered leaf that was slowly falling to the ground in astonishment. At this moment, it had turned emerald green and was full of vitality. This is the withered leaf rejuvenation, Exine Egier exclaimed. No wonder he, the junior uncle who led the team at the early stage of the Gold Core realm, was so shocked. In fact, not only him, even Bing Wuqing was visibly moved when she saw this scene. The withered leaf rejuvenation, like the falling leaves in autumn, was one of the few symbolic moves of the Yiling sect. However, it was never something that a foundation-building disciple could master. In theory, only a Gold Core expert could master it. No one would have thought that Duan Muyu, who was only at the foundation-building great completion, had already mastered this move. In this way, even if this woman's strength and potential were not comparable to the shocking geniuses like Long and Ling Tianyu, there was not much difference. Chapter 5206. Burning her life force in advance, and at the same time, a 3-month-long period of weakness. This is the price of rejuvenating withered leaves. She actually went this far just for a duel. Is this woman crazy? Bing Wuqing could not understand. In the eyes of a person who respected absolute rationality, Duan Muyu's actions were meaningless. Indeed, it was extremely likely that Duan Muyu would be able to win this battle by relying on the heaven-defying recovery effect of spring withered leaves. However, so what if she obtained the qualifications to participate in the primeval trials? There were less than 2 months left until the primeval trials. In other words, she would be in a weakened state for at least a month, and participating in the primeval trials in such a state was simply courting death. Instead of that, she might as well admit defeat. Even a child could distinguish the pros and cons of this. Was it just a momentary impulse? In fact, it was no wonder that Bing Wuqing could not understand. Even after her Dantian was destroyed by Lin Dongfang, she had always maintained sufficient rationality. A momentary impulse was an experience she had never experienced before, so naturally, she could not understand. However, Exine Egia could understand Duan Muyu's feelings. This was probably not a momentary impulse, but something she had long planned. Once the situation turned bad, she would use rejuvenating withered leaves and win at all costs. For Duan Muyu, this was not just because of the primordial trial qualification. More importantly, it was related to the reputation of the entire Yiling sect. She was the leading senior sister of the Yiling sect. If she could not even get the minimum qualification for the trial, wouldn't it be a disgrace to the entire Yiling sect? For the sake of the Yiling sect, Duan Muyu could not lose this duel no matter what. Absolutely not. Bystanders could see things clearly, but Long had never seen rejuvenating withered leaves before. Before she came to the secular world to train, she was only in the early stage of foundation establishment. Whether it was experience or strength, she was far from her level. In addition, she was from the always mysterious Yiling sect. Before this, she had never even heard of rejuvenating withered leaves, so she was at a loss for what to do. Bang! This time, it was Long who was sent flying. Duan Muyu, who had recovered to his peak state in an instant, was unstoppable. Even without a powerful move like a mountain-like leaf, Long, who had consumed a lot of energy, was no longer as strong as she wished. Immediately after that, Duan Muyu did not let Cold Long have the upper hand. He did not give Cold Long any chance to react at all as he followed up with a series of fierce attacks. Cold Long was completely at a disadvantage. Exine Egia felt a little strange as he watched the two of them intertwining with each other. He could not help but mumble, "Since you've recovered to your peak state with rejuvenation, you should have used powerful moves like falling leaves of autumn and mountainous leaf to end the battle as soon as possible. Why did you waste so much effort?" Ever since they had witnessed the power of the prison spell, everyone knew that they could not afford to drag out the fight with cold. Otherwise, the longer the fight dragged on, the more severe the frost damage they would suffer. Duan Muyu might have the upper hand now, but if he could not defeat Cold in a short time, he might just fail miserably. Duan Muyu must be well aware of this, but she still insisted on choosing this method. Was there any special purpose? 5 more moves. Duan Muyu silently reminded herself in her heart. She was estimating the effects of the prison drawing on her. If this trend continued, she would probably be frozen again in another 5 moves. At that time, she would really be powerless to reverse the situation. 5 more moves. Cold's judgment was the same as hers. As long as she could withstand 5 moves, she would win. With such judgment, the next 5 moves were destined to be thrilling. If the initial exchange of life for life was just a test, then this time it would be the real deal. The eyelids of the bystanders twitched. Both of them were injured every time they exchanged moves, but they maintained the toughest stance. Neither of them backed down. Once they backed down, they would lose. Are they still women? Why are they even more manly than us pure men? The men were sweating. A battle like this should be exciting, but it was a battle between 2 women. They did not know what to say. This battle is unexpectedly exciting. No matter who wins or loses, Cold should be able to benefit a lot. Linny nodded. Although he couldn't bear to watch Long Long get hurt, he wouldn't interrupt her as long as her life wasn't in danger. After all, there was nothing in this world that could make someone mature faster than an intense battle like this. In the blink of an eye, the 2 of them had exchanged 4 moves. There was only 1 move left to the bottom line of the judgment. There's no other way. Duan Muyu clenched her teeth. Her opponent's tenacity was far beyond her expectation. At this point, she could no longer hold back. She could only use the last of her vital energy to fight with all her might. 1 leaf like a mountain. Cold's heart skipped a beat. In her current state, it was already very difficult for her to withstand the previous 4 moves. It was impossible for her to withstand the 1 leaf like a mountain. More importantly, her frostbite speed was greatly affected by her painted ground imprisonment. She could not dodge it even if she wanted to. There's no other way. Cold said the same words as Duan Muyu. She did not dodge or dodge. She said in a deep voice as she formed a seal with her hands, "Ice prison mirror, shatter." As soon as she said that, everyone seemed to hear the sound of a huge ice mirror shattering. Then, not only in the field, but even the entire island's temperature suddenly dropped by a large margin, sending chills down everyone's spine. In the blink of an eye, the initially intense and explosive scene suddenly froze. The mountain-like leaf's powerful attack came to an abrupt halt. Cold and Duan Muyu did not make any follow-up moves at the same time because both of them were frozen stiff. This, Exine Igia looked at the scene with his mouth agape. He could not utter a proper sentence. Needless to say, the rest of them were dumbfounded and speechless for a long time. I didn't expect her to use the ice prison mirror. This is really... Linny was also a little shocked and did not know what to say. The ice prison mirror was the follow-up and advanced move of the painted ground imprisonment. The principle was to instantly erupt the bone-chilling coldness of the painted ground imprisonment in a more threatening way. However, as Cold had yet to fully master the painted ground imprisonment, it was only a preliminary idea in Lin Yi's mind. He had yet to figure out the specific way of circulating vital energy. He did not expect Cold to use it directly. Apart from her shocking innate talent, this girl's guts were also boundlessly big. It seems that both of them are frozen stiff and unable to move. Let's announce the result as soon as possible. Otherwise, there will be repercussions if they are frozen for too long. That'll be troublesome, said Lin Yi to Xianijia. Chapter 5207. Although Cold and Duanmu had lost their ability to move at the same time, both of them were still conscious. It seemed like they were desperately mobilizing the vital qi in their bodies. Under such circumstances, whoever could stand up first would be the winner. As long as they waited patiently, there would definitely be a result. However, it was as Linny had said, if they dragged it on like this, both of them would suffer from side effects from the cold. Compared to the outcome of this battle, the two of them were clearly more important. In this case, the result would be a big problem. After all, There had never been a tie in the trial competition. Moreover, this battle was directly related to the qualification for the Archean trial. Whoever lost would be directly eliminated. Even Xi and Aegea could not come to a conclusion so easily. Needless to say, of course we'll wait for them to stand up on their own. Shui Jianfeng snorted coldly. He did not care about Duanmu, but it would be best if he could take this opportunity to cripple Cold. That's impossible. Both Cold and Duanmu are genius disciples with outstanding aptitudes. If something really happens to them, let alone Yiling sect, even the upper echelons of your Snow Sword sect might not agree to it. Xi and Aegea refuted immediately and said in a deep voice, I'm the person in charge of this trial competition. I have the right to make decisions on the spot. I can't do something as stupid as letting them freeze to death. Shui Jianfeng choked. Xi and Aegea had the absolute right to speak, which he could not compete with. He could only take a step back and said, Then what do you want to do? You're not siding with Cold, are you? Although she's from my Snow Sword sect, it's obvious that Duanmu had the upper hand earlier. For the sake of fairness, I think Duanmu should be the winner. Xi and Aegea was speechless. Of course, he was siding with Cold. However, the situation just now was exactly as Shui Jianfeng said. If Cold won, not only would Duanmu not agree, but the others would also say that he was sitting on the wrong seat. I don't think so. Why don't you think about who performed the Shattered Ice Prison Mirror? If it wasn't for the power of the Shattered Ice Prison Mirror, it wouldn't have caused such a situation. No matter how you look at it, it should be considered as Cold's counterattack. Lin Yi immediately stood up and argued. Since it was related to Cold's qualification for the Archean trial, he naturally would not sit idly by. Reactive strike? You even froze yourself to this state? Do you want me to die of laughter? Shui Jianfeng snorted disdainfully. If it's that funny, why aren't you dying from laughing? Ziyu stuck her tongue out. You. Shui Jianfeng's eyes turned cold, and he subconsciously wanted to make a move to teach this stinky girl who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth a lesson. In the end, Lin Yi's stare made his hair stand on end, and he could only resentfully put away this thought. He muttered in his heart, this guy is clearly only at the great circle of foundation establishment, so why does he have such a frightening aura? Since everyone has their reasons, why don't we all vote together? Each leading senior brother from each sect has one vote. Whoever gets the most votes will be the winner, Xi and Aegea said after thinking for a while. I have no objections. Let's let them start healing then. Lin Yi looked at him. If Xi and Aegea was a little more daring, he'd definitely go against everyone's opinions and not use this kind of method to smooth things over. It looked like he didn't offend anyone, but in reality, he wasn't getting any favors from either side. The only good thing was that even if the Archean Alliance wanted to pursue the matter, he wouldn't have to take responsibility. After all, this was public opinion. It couldn't be helped. Xi and Aegea was just that kind of person. He looked honest but was actually very sly. He was easy to talk to normally, but when it came to a critical moment, all he could do was to protect himself. Lin Yi wasn't surprised at all. Haha, you really know how to flatter yourself. You're not the leading senior brother of any Archean sect. You don't even have the right to vote. What kind of opinion can you have? Shui Jianfeng took the chance to taunt. Who said I don't? Xi and Aegea snorted and immediately announced, Grandmaster is the most respected person in the Green Cloud sect of the North Island. Of course, Grandmaster has the final say on who the Green Cloud sect of the North Island wants to vote for. He also knew that his suggestion to let everyone vote had unwittingly displeased Lin Yi. At this time, of course, he had to think of a way to remedy the situation. Letting Lin Yi decide was equivalent to voting for Long Long in disguise, as a way to express his apology. All right then, I'll vote for Long Long, Lin Yi said bluntly. Some people are really mesmerized by lust, but I'm different. In this case, of course, we have to listen to the public opinion. The Snow Sword faction votes for Duanmu. Shui Jianfeng said tit for tat. When he said this, he completely forgot about the existence of Bing Wuqing. It should be known that Bing Wuqing was above him in both strength and status. Moreover, Bing Wuqing's identity in the secular world was the Snow Sword faction's leading senior uncle. She should be the one to make the decision, not Shui Jianfeng. Feeling a chill on his back, Shui Jianfeng suddenly reacted and hurriedly tried to salvage the situation. Grandmaster Bing must have the same idea, right? Bing Wuqing did not say anything. It was normal for her to express her dissatisfaction with Shui Jianfeng's decision, but it would be a little too obvious if she forcefully voted for Longlong. Therefore, she could only maintain her usual style and ignore it. Originally, whether Duanmuyu qualified for the Archean trial or not had nothing to do with him. However, after watching this duel, this woman's determination really moved him. Moreover, Lin Yi was also very interested in the rejuvenation of withered leaves. There was no mention of this move in the summary of the mental cultivation methods sent by Tian Chan. Therefore, he might as well do her a favor. Maybe he could find a chance to get some words out of her in the future. Exine pondered for a moment and finally nodded. Yes, Granduncle Master is right. Rules are dead and people are alive. For this duel, Duanmuyu even used the rejuvenation of withered leaves. It would be too unreasonable to force her to lose. Since that's the case, I'll declare it a draw. Nobody objected to this result. Firstly, it was to do Linny a favor. Secondly, the result did not affect them at all. At most, Duanmuyu qualified for the trial. Moreover, Duanmuyu had just used the rejuvenation of withered leaves. It would be impossible for her to recover within 3 months. Even if she qualified for the trial, it would only be symbolic. Wait, Shui Jianfeng jumped out again and interrupted. What do you want? Xianijia, the honest man, finally got angry after being interrupted by this guy several times. He said with an unfriendly expression, according to the results of the voting, cold one. Announcing it as a draw is already very considerate of you. Shui Jianfeng, don't push your luck. This, Shui Jianfeng choked for a moment. At this moment, he actually felt a substantial killing intent from the other party for the first time. An honest man was really scary when he was angry. After choking for a moment, Shui Jianfeng finally chose to shut his mouth. Now, not only the honest man, Xianijia, was angry, but everyone else was also staring at him with an unfriendly expression. If this went on, he would completely offend the crowd. It was unnecessary just for such a small matter. In this way, the opening battle of the 5th round of the trial competition ended in a draw. Cold and Duanmuyu qualified for the Archean trial at the same time. Duanmuyu panted weakly as she forced herself to lift her head to look at Lin Yi. Thank you. She knew very well that if it was not for Lin Yi's insistence, Cold would have definitely won this battle. If that happened, she would be eliminated on the spot. Losing the qualification for the trial was a small matter, but it would affect the reputation of Yiling's sect. That was why she was grateful. You're welcome, Linny said as he looked at her. Not only was she very weak, but she also suffered from severe frostbite due to the intense battle with Cold. She was too close to Cold when the ice prison mirror was broken. He said, if you don't mind, how about I help you to heal your wound? I think it's hard for you to recover on your own in your current state, right? But Duanmuyu was a little hesitant. She was now in a weak state where the vital energy in her body was very weak. She did not know how long it would take for her to completely recover on her own. Moreover, the degree of frostbite from the ice prison mirror was not something that could be recovered easily unless there was a special medicinal pill in this area. I'm going to heal Cold anyway. If you don't mind, you can come along. It's no trouble at all. Linny smiled. Duanmuyu hesitated for a moment and finally nodded. All right, thank you. With her status and background in Yiling's sect, the sect's higher-ups would definitely think of a way if she made a request. However, it was a problem whether she could take the medicinal pill in her current state. If she was not careful, the life-saving medicinal pill might turn into a fatal poison instead. Instead of that, it was better to take the risk and trust Linny for once. Chapter 5209. Teet. He doesn't even let Duanmuyu go, what a pervert. Shui Jianfeng curled his lips at the scene, but there was an obvious jealousy in him. He'd been dreaming of replacing Linny with himself. He had Lingshan and the others help Cold and Duanmuyu to a secluded area to sit down. He then sat down and started healing the two girls. The frostbite from the shattered ice prison mirror was very troublesome, and even a great recovery pill wouldn't have much of an effect. Lung Lung was fine, since she was the source of all the frostbite. Even if he got frostbite, it wouldn't be too serious. Duanmuyu, on the other hand, was in trouble. Not only was her frostbite severe, but she was also in an extremely weak state. Even if she used qi to treat her wounds, it would be even worse if she used a great recovery pill. It was a good thing that Lin Yi's consciousness was much sharper than when he was on Sky-class Island, and his control of qi was much finer and sharper. Otherwise, he might really be helpless. Feeling the subtle changes in her body, Duanmuyu's eyes widened in disbelief. This Lin Yi actually had such a miraculous healing method. Don't move, or don't blame me if you lose control of your qi. Lin Yi frowned. I'm sorry. Duanmuyu blushed and quickly suppressed the shock in her heart, trying her best not to move. After a while, Lung Lung's internal injuries were no longer a problem. She told Lin Yi about it and went to the side to continue her healing. Duanmuyu, on the other hand, had only recovered a small portion of her injuries. There's something I'm really curious about. I wonder if you could answer it for me? Lin Yi suddenly asked in the middle of healing. Duanmuyu paused and reacted. This is why you're healing me? Don't worry, it's just a common question. Lin Yi smiled and asked, Rejuvenation leaf should be a very costly move, right? Can you tell me about it? Overdrawing your life force in advance, plus a 3-month period of weakness. Duanmuyu didn't try to hide anything. There was nothing to hide. Anyone in the Archaic Alliance with the slightest bit of experience would know this. What about the effect? After paying such a huge price, he must have recovered to his peak state, right? Why don't I look like it? Lin Yi continued to ask. You could tell? Duanmuyu was shocked. Nonsense. If you had really recovered to your peak state at that time, why would you need to be so restrained when facing Colt? I think it's because he doesn't have enough true qi in his body, so he doesn't dare to rashly use powerful moves, right? Lin Yi speculated. Even from his point of view, the combination of falling leaves in autumn and a mountain-like leaf was a very simple and unsolvable combo. Not to mention the foundation building stage, it would be very effective even in the gold core stage. It should not be a problem to deal with Lung Lung in that state. Duanmuyu went silent for a moment before he said slowly, Since it's like that, then I won't conceal it anymore. I didn't utilize the complete version of rejuvenation, so I haven't recovered to my peak state. I've only recovered less than half of it. I see. Then the period of weakness won't be as long as 3 months, right? Can I make it in time for the primordial trials? Lin Yi suddenly came to a realization. This Duanmuyu was not the kind of woman who only lived for the sex reputation. The fact that she could use the incomplete version of rejuvenation in that situation not only proved that she had outstanding qualifications, but also proved that she was very smart. If everything goes well, it should be possible. Duanmuyu nodded. This primordial trials happened once in 1,000 years. She did not want to miss it no matter what. Then, I wish you all the best. Lin Yi suddenly stood up and said lightly, The frostbite has been cleared. You can only rely on yourself to slowly recover from the following matters. Excuse me. Oh, thank you. Duanmuyu sensed the condition of her body. As expected, other than being extremely weak, everything else was normal. She could not help but be surprised and happy. Seeing that Lin Yi was about to leave, she asked, Why did you help me? Could it be that you've fallen for me? Lin Yi's body staggered, almost choking on her words. Wasn't this woman a little too direct? What? Isn't it? Duanmuyu was stunned. In her opinion, since Lin Yi showed his goodwill to her for no reason and took the initiative to heal her, he must have some ulterior motives. It couldn't be that he really wanted to ask that common-sense question just now, right? Other than her looks, could it be that he had taken a fancy to something else? Although the word beauty didn't really match with Duanmuyu's manly temperament, it was undeniable that she was indeed a unique beauty. There was no lack of suitors in the small pugilistic world of the supreme ancient immortal realms. It was just that none of them could enter her sights. Being stared at by her like this, Lin Yi felt a little awkward. He thought for a moment and said, "If I said that I was looking for an opportunity to secretly learn rejuvenation, would you believe me?" Although this was mostly a joke, after witnessing the heaven-defying effects of rejuvenation, it would be a lie if Lin Yi said that he was not tempted at all. Although this move had terrible after effects, the powerful effect of instantly restoring one's peak state was still very useful in certain situations. However, to Lin Yi, who had the jade pendant space to continuously replenish his spirit chi, rejuvenation was not that valuable. It could only be considered a good backup trump card. Of course, it still had great research value. You want to learn rejuvenation? Duan Muyu looked at Lin Yi seriously, pondered for a moment, and shook her head. This is the trump card of our Yiling sect, and we can't teach it to outsiders casually. Moreover, the aptitude requirement to master this move is very unique. Even among the Yiling sect's disciples, there aren't many who can master it. Oh, forget it then. It was just a whim. Goodbye. As he spoke, Lin Yi left, leaving only a silhouette in the distance. This Lin Yi is really a guy who can't be seen through, Duan Muyu said thoughtfully. Although the battle between Cold and Duan Muyu had dragged out a lot of time, there were very few battles in the 5th round to begin with. Basically, there were only 2 or 3 battles in each group, and most of them ended very quickly. Among them, it was worth mentioning that there was a familiar face to Lin Yi in the mid-stage Foundation Establishment Group, Fei Yangsheng. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.